Chapter 11:26. Today it had gone against Ning Xuema. In any case, it would either be poisoned to death or stabbed to death. After Ning Xuema saw that the Snow Wrm King had indeed breathed its last, she clapped her hands and smiled as she gave the great god an okay gesture. It indicated that she had successfully completed her task. Then she wanted to fly over to check on Tian Xueqing and the rest's injuries. Shen Juli looked at her flying over in high spirits and smiled faintly. He waved his sleeves and a gust of wind blew her back to the Snow Wrm King's side. Amidst the whistling wind, Shen Juli's voice was exceptionally clear, as though it was right beside her ear. Retrieve the crystal pillar from the Snow Wrm King's body. Ning Xuema, all right, since the great god had instructed her, she would just do as he said. Shen Juli had unknowingly appeared beside her and was leisurely supervising her. She was panting as she dug out the crystal pillar and asked, "Great God, how are Ji Yunhuang and Tian Xueqing?" Shen Juli casually said, "Don't worry, they won't die." Ning Xuema, all right, as long as they won't die. Kirin flew over with the three people on its back. With a shake of its body, it threw the three people down. Ji Yunhuang sat on the ground and was about to meditate when he suddenly thought of something. He looked around and saw Shui Mo lying quietly beside him. He was startled and realized that Tian Xueqing, who was supposed to be beside him, was sitting in the snow some distance away from him. Her eyes were slightly closed and her face was pale. She was quietly meditating. She was severely injured, and her arm and shoulder were still bleeding profusely. Ordinary medicine had no effect on her at all. Only he had medicine that was specially made for medicine men. However, she was avoiding him like he was a fierce beast and was not even willing to stay by his side. Ji Yunhuang's heart was suddenly filled with anger. This must be her trick to make him feel sorry for her. She was even playing hard to get and staying so far away from him. He wanted to see how long she could last. In the end, she would definitely take the initiative to run over. Ji Yunhuang fiercely averted his gaze. He could not be deceived by her delicate appearance. Shui Mo groaned and slowly woke up. When she saw Ji Yunhuang beside her, she abruptly hugged his arm. "Big brother Yunhuang." Wu Shimo is so scared. Shimo almost couldn't see big brother Yunhuang again. Ji Yunhuang pulled her into his embrace and comforted her in a low voice. "Mo, don't be afraid. Everything is fine now," Shui Mo suddenly hissed and her brows furrowed slightly. When she raised her head again, her large eyes were already filled with tears and her voice was filled with grievance. "Big brother Yunhuang, Mo's body hurts." Ji Yunhuang's psychokinesis circulated around Shui Mo's body, but there didn't seem to be any wounds. "Where does it hurt?" Shui Mo said pitifully, my knee is bruised." "It hurts?" Ji Yunhuang frowned. "What happened? Did Tian Xueqing not take good care of you?" He couldn't help but look at Tian Xueqing, who was not far away, and suddenly realized that she was quietly looking at him. Her ink-black eyes were heavy and emotionless. Shui Mo shook her head. "No, big sister Xueqing protected me very well. In order to protect me, big sister Xueqing pushed me out. I was careless and knocked against the rock." Ji Yunhuang coldly questioned Tian Xueqing. "Is what Shui Mo said true? What else do you have to say?" Although he knew that Tian Xueqing was also protecting Shui Mo, Ji Yunhuang couldn't help but speak sharply when he saw her indifferent expression. Chapter 11:27. Tian Xueqing lowered her eyes slightly and felt a stab of pain in her heart. After half a year of being misunderstood and wronged, she still had not gotten used to it. After a while, she looked up and her expression darkened. With an indifferent expression she said, "I have nothing to say." Ji Yunhuang was a little upset. Seeing that blood was still seeping out of Shui Mo's wound, he became even more upset. His voice instantly turned cold. "Why are you still standing there? You pushed Shui Mo down and injured her. Why aren't you healing her?" Shui Mo helplessly tugged at Ji Yunhuang's sleeve and was so anxious that he almost cried. "Big brother Yunhuang, don't blame big sister Xueqing. Big sister Xueqing also has many injuries on her body." "Mo's small injuries?" Ji Yunhuang pulled out his sleeve. "Don't say any more." Shui Mo was so scared that she kept quiet. Tian Xueqing suddenly felt that it was a little ironic. Was she so pitiful that she was pitted to the point of being pitted by a little girl? It doesn't matter. I don't care anymore. It's going to end soon." Tian Xueqing silently walked over. With a flip of her hand, a sharp dagger appeared in her palm. Without any change in her expression, she made a cut on her arm. The wound that had stopped bleeding earlier immediately started to bleed again. Ji Yunhuang was speechless. He almost wanted to strangle the woman in front of him. His eyes were about to burst into flames. Tian Xueqing, are you doing this on purpose? You could have just cut a small wound. Are you trying to trick me? Before the old wound on her arm healed, new wounds were added to it. Bright red blood kept flowing out. It was a little dazzling for him. However, as if she did not feel it, she pulled Shui Mo's leg over and dripped the blood on her knee. The small wound on Shui Mo's knee emitted a faint halo. In the halo, Shui Mo's wound gradually healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was as smooth as before. After Tian Xueqing finished dripping the blood, her face became even paler. It was almost the same color as the surrounding snow. She did not even look at Ji Yunhuang. She closed her eyes and quietly meditated. Ji Yunhuang was completely ignored. His face turned slightly green from anger. You purposely made this appearance for me to see, right? Tian Xueqing, you are really scheming. Tian Xueqing suddenly opened her eyes and smiled faintly. You flatter me. Although she was smiling, her eyes were filled with sorrow. How did she and he end up like this? Half a year of being the crown princess was like purgatory, and all of her love had been worn away. Ji Yunhuang choked. After a long while, he threw over a small bottle and coldly said, Don't die on the road. No one will collect your corpse. Ning Xuema almost wanted to slap Ji Yunhuang to death. What was he saying? She wanted to discipline him, but now was not the time to be distracted. Tian Xueqing's face was pale, and her eyes were as dark as ink. She kept smiling and nodded. All right, I won't die on the road. Your Highness can rest assured. With that, she picked up the ointment and applied it on herself. Her actions affected her wound, but she only paused for a moment. She didn't even frown before continuing to apply the ointment. Ning Xuema had already dug out the crystal pillar inside the Snow WRM King's body. She raised her eyebrows slightly. Great God, there are actually 2 crystal pillars inside the Snow WRM King's body, one ice and one fire. Shinjuli took a look and waved his hand. The 2 crystal pillars were taken out and placed neatly on Ning Xuema's palm. The great god's words were simple but crucial: absorb. Ning Xuema could only sit cross-legged and slowly absorb the energy in the crystal pillars. Chapter 11:28. Water was wood. The crystal pillar nourished the wood element in her body, and the fire element was naturally absorbing the fire crystal pillar at the same time. As the 2 crystal pillars were gradually absorbed, Ning Xuema felt that her power had increased a little. It was as if there was an endless amount of psychokinesis in her body. She looked at Tian Xueqing, who was applying medicine to her wounds, and an idea came to her mind. A green light was emitted and gently enveloped Tian Xueqing. After a while, she withdrew her technique and asked with a smile, Xueqing, are you feeling better? Tian Xueqing felt that the pain in her body seemed to have lessened a lot. She smiled faintly and felt a warmth in her heart. Xuema, thank you. Ning Xuema smiled and shifted her gaze to Ji Yunhuang. She casually healed him and waved her hand. No need to thank me. Ji Yunhuang looked at her with a complicated gaze. Xuema? Seeing Han Shanyue, who was beside her, his gaze darkened. He then asked softly, Are you all right? It was a normal greeting. Ning Xuema was about to reply when Kirin suddenly shouted as if he had discovered a new continent, Master! Master! Don't you think this little girl looks a little like you when you were young? I was wondering why she looked so familiar just now. Ning Xuema was stunned. She carefully looked at Xuemo and her heart sank. She was wondering why she felt that this little girl looked so familiar when she first saw her. Kirin saw Ning Xuema's slightly gloomy expression and his heart thumped. He immediately said loudly, Of course, only a little bit, just a little bit. Xuemo's face was slightly similar to Ning Xuema's, especially the expression when Xuemo tilted her head and looked at people. Ji Yunhuang's face instantly turned pale. He had found a substitute who looked slightly similar to Xuema. He originally thought that it would not be discovered, but he did not expect to be exposed in front of everyone. Xuemo helplessly grabbed Ji Yunhuang's sleeve, as if she did not understand why everyone's gaze was suddenly focused on her. She shrunk behind Ji Yunhuang and said softly, Brother Yunhuang? At this moment, Ji Yunhuang could not hear Xuemo at all. His mind was filled with random thoughts. How would Xuemo react? Would she cut ties with him? Ning Xuema faintly glanced at Ji Yunhuang and sighed. You should properly cherish Xueqing. Ning Xuema didn't want to get involved in their affairs. She still remembered the last time she interfered, so she wouldn't interfere this time. She pulled Shinjuli's hand and said with an indifferent expression, Guru, let's go. The 2 of them left hand in hand. Ji Yunhuang's lips moved. He wanted to urge them to stay, but he couldn't find a reason to do so. He could only stare blankly as the two of them walked away. Their figures slowly disappeared into the horizon. Tian Xueqing looked at him quietly, a complicated look flashing through her dark eyes. She loved Ji Yunhuang, but she couldn't get him. On the other hand, he loved Xuema, but Xuema treated him like a normal friend. It was truly a miraculous cycle of reincarnation. He injured himself and Xuema hurt him. This should be retribution. Tian Xueqing looked at Ji Yunhuang's pale face and suddenly felt a burst of joy. This joy was accompanied by heartache, causing her heart to tighten. She suddenly lowered her head and coughed incessantly. Her voice was heart-wrenching. She covered her mouth with her hand and coughed for a long time before she stopped. When Ji Yunhuang saw her like this, his heart was in a mess. It was as if he was annoyed, but at the same time, his heart ached for her. He asked dryly, "What's wrong?" Tian Xueqing's palm was a little red. She replied as if nothing had happened, "Nothing." She secretly wiped the blood off her palm on the snow. Chapter 11:29. She stood up and said indifferently, "Let's continue on our way." Ji Yunhuang stood up and did not even look at Tian Xueqing. He pulled Shui Amo and walked forward. Tian Xueqing silently followed behind him. The wind in the snowy plains was strong and Shui Amo could not stand the cold air. Ji Yunhuang set up a barrier to isolate himself from Shui Amo and the wind. Shui Amo mumbled, "Brother Yunhuang, Sister Xueqing is also very cold. You should set up a barrier for her too." Ji Yunhuang turned around to look at Tian Xueqing. Seeing that her expression was still indifferent, he turned back and continued to talk to Shui Amo. Tian Xueqing felt cold all over. The wind in the snowy plains was bone-chilling and she almost lost consciousness. She looked in front and saw that Shui Amo looked very comfortable inside the barrier. He was talking and laughing with Ji Yunhuang as they walked forward. A snowflake fell on her hair. Ji Yunhuang raised his hand and brushed it away for her. His every action was filled with affection. Tian Xueqing looked away. She knew that she would never have this kind of warmth. The cold wind stimulated the hidden injuries in her body and she could not help but cough again. Ji Yunhuang subconsciously turned around and saw her wiping the blood from the corner of her mouth. He stopped in his tracks. Shui Amo curiously turned around, but Tian Xueqing had already returned to normal. She pulled Ji Yunhuang's sleeve and asked, "Brother Yunhuang, what's wrong?" Ji Yunhuang's footsteps only paused for a moment before he continued to hold Shui Amo's hand and walked forward. He said calmly, "Nothing." However, when Shui Amo spoke to him again, Ji Yunhuang would only answer one sentence out of every 10 sentences she said. He seemed to be absent-minded. After a while, Ji Yunhuang suddenly raised his hand and a white light instantly enveloped Tian Xueqing. The wind and snow around her immediately weakened. Did Ji Yunhuang set up a barrier for her? Tian Xueqing looked at him in astonishment. After a while she quietly said, "Thank you, Your Highness." Ji Yunhuang did not pay attention to her and continued to talk with Shui Amo. Tian Xueqing's voice floated in the wind and sounded a little lonely. She slightly lowered her eyes and told herself not to think too much. He was just taking pity on her. Her warm heart turned cold again, just like the words that fell into the wind and no one answered. The three of them walked for another half a day. After all, Shui Amo was still a child and could not endure such trekking. She could not take it anymore and staggered. If Ji Yunhuang had not caught her in time, she would have fallen to the ground. Shui Amo looked at Ji Yunhuang pitifully. "Big brother Yunhuang, Amo is so tired." Ji Yunhuang looked at the frail Tian Xueqing behind him and said, "Then let's rest for a while." The three of them sat down. Tian Xueqing and Ji Yunhuang were meditating, but Shui Amo couldn't sit still at all. Ji Yunhuang made her move so much that he almost suffered from qi deviation. He opened his eyes helplessly and asked, "Amo, what's wrong? Where do you feel uncomfortable?" Ing Shui shook his head like a rattledrum. "No, Amo is very good." Before he could finish, his stomach growled. "Shui Amo." She patted her stomach in annoyance and said anxiously, "Amo is not hungry at all." Not to be outdone, his stomach growled again. This time it was very loud. Even Tian Xueqing, who was meditating not far away, opened her eyes and quietly looked at them. "Ji Yunhuang." He helplessly patted Shui Mo's head. "Wait." He turned his head and said to Tian Xueqing, who was not far away, "Take good care of her." They had already finished their food, so they could only hunt by themselves. Chapter 11:30. He had just walked a short distance when he suddenly felt the ground shaking. He almost couldn't stand still. "Ah! Brother Yunhuang, save me!" Shui Mo suddenly screamed. Ji Yunhuang turned his head and saw that the ground had suddenly split open and Shui Mo had instantly fallen in. Xueqing was not far from him. She flashed to the edge of the crack and seemed to want to jump in as well. Ji Yunhuang's expression changed. "What are you doing? Get out of the way." However, Tian Xueqing's figure only paused for a moment before she decisively jumped down. Ji Yunhuang only managed to grab a piece of her clothes. With a ripping sound, her clothes were torn apart, leaving only a small piece of cloth in his hand. It still carried the faint warmth of her body. He looked down and saw that the crevice was so deep that he couldn't see the bottom. The two people had already disappeared. Xueamo. Xueqing. Just as he steeled his heart and was about to jump down, the ground suddenly shook again, and the crack in the ground closed up like a huge mouth. From the moment the ground shook to when the dust settled, everything happened in less than 10 seconds. In less than 10 seconds, everything returned to normal, but two people were missing. Ji Yunhuang's mind was blank. His mind was filled with Tian Xueqing's resolute figure when she jumped down. What was she doing? Was she going to kill herself to take revenge on him? This thought made Ji Yunhuang's hands and feet tremble. He wanted to use magic to open the crack, but he was afraid that he would hurt the two people underground. In the end, he could only use his hands to open the crack. Tian Xueqing did not jump down to save Xueamo. She was not so kind and magnanimous that she would risk her life to save a girl who was intimate with Ji Yunhuang every day. Saving her was just on the way. She jumped down because she saw the serene orchid grass on the cliff. This was the purpose of their group. Tian Xueqing had already done the preliminary work. As long as she took the serene orchid grass and fed it to Ji Yunhuang, he would no longer have to be affectionate with her every 2 days. He would no longer have to look at her as if she was his mortal enemy. She would be able to set him free and let herself go. It was time for this petty and unrequited love to end. After she saved Xueamo, she jumped up and took down the serene orchid grass with a few leaps. She lightly tapped on the cliff and flew up. However, she did not expect the crack to close instantly. She watched helplessly as the path to survival closed before her eyes. She was shocked and her psychic power dissipated, causing her to fall. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and kicked the cave wall with her toes to slow down the speed of her fall. Otherwise she would have fallen to her death. Just as they were about to land on the ground, she saw Xueamo looking at her with teary eyes in the light of the orchids. That look reminded her of the time when she was 14 years old, when she was faced with a treacherous person in despair. He couldn't bear to see her like this, so he pulled her into his embrace. Bang! Tian Xueqing crashed heavily onto the ground. The gravel on the ground pierced into Tian Xueqing's body. Tian Xueqing's face paled. She didn't even need to look to know that her back had been pierced into a mess. Xueamo was protected in Tian Xueqing's arms, so he didn't suffer any injuries. However, he was too frightened and didn't dare to move. Tian Xueqing felt pain all over her body. She sucked in a breath of cold air and frowned. Her face turned even paler. Xueamo asked with a trembling voice, "Sister Xueqing, what's wrong?" Tian Xueqing only recovered after a long time. She whispered, "Get down?" Xueamo was stunned for a moment before he scrambled down from her body. He reached out his small hand to Tian Xueqing and said, "Sister Xueqing, let me help you up." Chapter 1131. Tian Xueqing ignored the outstretched hand and slowly got up. Every time she moved, she felt a heart-wrenching pain. She bit her lips until they bled. Finally, she sat up slowly and passed a small bottle to Xueamo. She said calmly, "Help me apply the medicine. My back." Xueamo took the small bottle and turned it to Tian Xueqing's back. "Sister Xueqing, let me help you take off your shirt." When Xueamo saw the bloody wounds on her back, he was so scared that his hands trembled. He gently touched her back and asked, "Sister Xueqing, does it hurt?" She was on the verge of tears. Tian Xueqing did not say anything. She sat there quietly and meditated to heal herself. Xueamo applied the medicine bit by bit. She was inexperienced and accidentally hurt Tian Xueqing a few times, causing Tian Xueqing's body to stiffen. However, Tian Xueqing recovered in an instant and allowed her to continue applying the medicine. There was only her and Xueamo in this place. There was no better choice, so she could only let this newbie do it. After applying the medicine, Xueamo tore off her clothes and wanted to bandage Tian Xueqing's wounds. Tian Xueqing said quietly, "There's no need. Help me put on my clothes." Xueamo did as she was told and sat beside her. Tears rolled down her cheeks and were about to fall. Her voice trembled slightly. "Sister Xueqing, will we die here?" Tian Xueqing said calmly, "No." Xueamo's eyes lit up. "Sister Xueqing, when can we leave?" Tian Xueqing only said one word. "Wait." After saying that, she closed her eyes and sat there quietly. She began to regulate her breathing and heal herself. Shui Mo wanted to say something, but when she saw Tian Xueqing's cold expression, she was so scared that she did not dare to say anything. She sat close to Tian Xueqing, as if she was afraid that someone would take her away. After all, she was still a child. In a situation where she was tired, hungry, and scared, her head started to nod. In the end, her head tilted and she leaned on Tian Xueqing's body. She had already fallen asleep. Tian Xueqing glanced at her and let her lean on her to sleep. Tian Xueqing circulated her energy for a while and finally felt that her body was not as painful. Perhaps it was because of the medicine, the wounds on her back were not as painful. Suddenly, a tentacle emerged from the ground and wrapped around Shui Mo's foot. He pulled her down. Shui Mo suddenly woke up. Seeing the tentacles around his ankle, he hurriedly struggled but failed to break free. He was so frightened that he burst into tears. She hugged Tian Xueqing's arm. "Sister Xueqing, save me." Tian Xueqing was startled awake from her meditation. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw a tentacle sticking out of her. Startled, she broke free from Shui Mo's hand and retreated. At the same time, she drew her sword. The tentacle suddenly attacked, but was cut down by her sword. She leaped in front of Shui Mo, and Shui Mo's left leg had already sunk in. Tian Xueqing picked up Shui Mo and tried to pull him out, but he couldn't move at all. But in vain, it sank down a little more. Tian Xueqing looked at Shui Mo, who was scared out of his wits and crying out loud. A look of pity flashed across her eyes. She then pulled out her sword and said softly, "Bear with it." Blood splattered everywhere. Shui Mo screamed and fainted from the pain. Tian Xueqing picked Shui Mo up and hit a few of her major acupoints to stop the bleeding. Then she cut off the tentacle that was following closely behind. She suddenly leaped up. Shui Mo's broken leg was still bleeding profusely. This caused the tentacles to chase after them even more crazily. In the vast ice field there were countless monsters. Tian Xueqing couldn't figure out what these tentacles were. Chapter 1132. The speed of this thing was extremely fast. It danced under her feet and almost entangled Tian Xueqing's feet. Tian Xueqing knew that only by throwing Shui Mo away would she have a chance to survive. However, looking at the little girl in her arms, she could not bear to do so. She was the girl that Ji Yunhuang loved and cared for with all his heart. If she died, Ji Yunhuang would be very sad. Forget it, she would just do one last thing for Ji Yunhuang. Tian Xueqing hugged Shui Mo tightly. She stepped on the wall of the cave and flew up a little. The number of tentacles below her had reached more than 100, densely packed like snakes as they chased after her. There were a few times when they almost pulled Tian Xueqing down. Luckily, she reacted quickly and avoided them. Suddenly, a ray of light appeared. The ray of light became bigger and bigger, closer and closer. She was already very close to the top of the cave. When Tian Xueqing arrived, the entrance of the cave was already big enough for two people to pass through. She suddenly jumped up. Her eyes lit up, but her body suddenly sank. Her heart tightened as she felt a tentacle coiling around her ankle. Xueqing. Tian Xueqing reacted quickly. She threw Shui Mo away and stabbed her sword into the ground. Half of her body was stuck at the entrance of the cave. Ji Yunhuang hugged her with his hands full of blood. His voice trembled as he said, "Xueqing." The moment he saw her head, Ji Yunhuang was ecstatic. He hugged her tightly and tried his best to pull her out. At this moment, Tian Xueqing's body was already entangled with more than 100 tentacles. He could not pull her out at all. He could only watch her body sink bit by bit. Ji Yunhuang hugged her tightly and did not let go. He used so much strength that his veins popped out. However, he was still unable to stop her from sinking. The pain of losing her forever spread wildly in his heart. His voice was trembling as he said, "Xueqing, Xueqing." Tian Xueqing's body sank bit by bit. Ji Yunhuang hugged her tightly and his body sank as well. "Let go!" Tian Xueqing suddenly shouted. If he did not let go, both of them would fall down. "Xueqing." Ji Yunhuang was not willing to let go. He grabbed her tightly and said, "I'll carry you up." If he carried her, both of them could only fall down. Tian Xueqing raised her finger. A bright light flew up and went straight for Ji Yunhuang's chest. Ji Yunhuang was shocked and his body flashed. Tian Xueqing, who was in his arms, suddenly sank down. Ji Yunhuang hurriedly tried to grab her again, but he only managed to grab one of her hands. At this moment, there were 100 tentacles wrapped around her body. The ground was dark and boundless, but Tian Xueqing's eyes were astonishingly bright. like stars in the cold night. She even smiled. "Your Highness, you don't have to collect my corpse now." That smile was like an epiphyllum in the cold night, blooming in an instant with a cool fragrance. The few times Ji Yunhuang smiled at her was a long time ago. Although she was cold at that time, she was passionate about him. Since when did she gradually lose her smile? She became more and more distant from him, and the way she looked at him became more and more indifferent, as if she was looking at a complete stranger. And since when did his eyes start to revolve around her more and more? Her distant gaze almost drove him crazy. He began to spend all day with Shui Mo, just to see her indifferent expression crack and change into one of jealousy or sadness. It would be fine as long as she was not so indifferent to him. But she did not even once. Tian Xueqing only looked at them quietly. Under her indifferent gaze for the first time he felt like a clown. Chapter 1133. Now he finally saw her smile again, but he did not expect that it would be the last time. Ji Yunhuang's heart ached so much that he curled up into a ball. The pain caused his whole body to tremble, and he almost lost his grip on her hand. Tian Xueqing said softly, "Your Highness, I have placed the serene orchid grass on Shui Mo. You don't have to worry." There was no need to hold on so tightly. Even if she died, she would not be a hindrance to him anymore. Her mission had already been completed. Ji Yunhuang's voice trembled strangely. It sounded like he was crying and laughing at the same time. "Xueqing, forgive me." Tian Xueqing smiled and shook her head. "Let's not meet again in the next life." Feeling Tian Xueqing slowly let go of his hand, the usually calm Ji Yunhuang could no longer remain calm. His face was filled with panic and his voice trembled. "Xueqing, don't let go. This prince orders you not to let go." Tian Xueqing smiled and shook her head. Her expression was relaxed, as if she had finally been freed. She looked at him one last time and said, "Xueqing is already dead. A new person can be appointed. Be happy for 100 years and have many children and grandchildren." Then she let go of his hand and fell into the endless abyss. Xueqing. The last thing Tian Xueqing saw was Ji Yunhuang's red eyes and a hideous expression of pain. The crack in the ground that he had painstakingly dug closed again. Ji Yunhuang stood there in a daze. Her last smile flashed before his eyes. He thought that she would pester him for a lifetime and that she would never let go of his hand, but he did not expect that. "Tian Xueqing, didn't you want the position of crown princess? Why did you let go? Why did you let go?" Ji Yunhuang suddenly looked like a madman as he dug at the crack in the ground. "Tian Xueqing, I won't allow you to give up. I won't allow you to give up. Tian Xueqing, come back." Ning Xuema's imperial sword technique was already quite stable. After she and Xin Zhuli collected herbs from the ice plains, they went to several places to train. When the two of them returned to the Sun Moon sect, 2 to 3 months had already passed. Ning Xuema had also successfully advanced and was now at Earth rank level 7. The two of them went straight to the heavenly sound peak. Xin Zhouli's sound-transmitting talisman suddenly rang. He picked it up and said indifferently, "What's the matter?" Yelu Jing An's gentle voice came from the talisman, "Master, Ji Yunhuang requests an audience." Xin Zhouli frowned slightly. After a while he said, "Approved." Ji Yunhuang's sudden request for an audience made Ning Xuema's heart sink. Could something have happened? When Ji Yunhuang walked in, Ning Xuema's eyes widened in shock. Was the person in front of her really that lofty and arrogant crown prince, Ji Yunhuang? His face was pale and haggard and his eyes were empty. He looked like he had lost his soul. Ning Xuema's heart sank even more. She asked, "Yunhuang, what happened to you?" Ji Yunhuang glanced at Ning Xuema and revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. "Xuema. Xueqing is dead?" Ning Xuema suddenly stood up. "Xueqing is dead. Such a good girl, a girl who loved Ji Yunhuang so deeply, was actually dead?" Ning Xuema slowly sat back down in her chair. She was in a daze. Ji Yunhuang suddenly started coughing violently, as if he was going to vomit out his heart. Ning Xuema was speechless. Her fingers slightly tightened. Ji Yunhuang's face was pale and there was blood at the corner of his lips. He was coughing up blood. It was obvious that his heart was injured. She asked, "I heard that Ding Qi had to be with you for 3 years before she could leave. You're so weak now. Is it because she died in advance? Do you want Dizun to save you?" Chapter 1134. Ji Yunhuang finally managed to stop coughing, but when he heard Ning Xuema's words, it was as if he had been slapped in the face. His expression changed. "No." He took a few steps back and his voice became even softer. No. No, he seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. She found the serene orchid grass for me, it can undo that function. He trembled as he took out a dried blue grass and looked at Shinjuli who was sitting on the throne. A glimmer of hope finally appeared in his eyes as he knelt down. Ancestor, I beg you to save Xueqing. I don't want this grass, I only want her back. I beg you, you must have a way. He was like a drowning man who had finally found a life-saving straw. He looked at Shinjuli with eyes full of hope. Shinjuli silently looked at Ji Yunhuang's soulless appearance. Ji Yunhuang's figure overlapped with Tian Xiaoshu's figure. That year, the disciple he was most proud of had also knelt down like this and begged him to save Ling Zai. In his previous life, Tian Xiaoshu had regretted it for the rest of his life. In order to make it up to this disciple, he had directly bestowed Tian Xueqing to him in this life. Who would have thought, in the end, the two of them were not fated to meet. Time passed bit by bit. The glimmer in Ji Yunhuang's eyes became weaker and weaker. He was like a drowning man as he said in panic, Ancestor? Shinjuli finally opened his mouth, his tone carrying a trace of coldness. Since you don't love her, why not let her go? Ji Yunhuang's body stiffened. He painfully lowered his head and said in a trembling voice, She is my crown princess. She cannot die. Ning Xuema secretly sighed. Even now, Ji Yunhuang still refused to recognize his feelings for Tian Xueqing? She faintly interrupted from the side. Crown princess? If you want, there are many women who can be your crown princess. Since you don't love her, what does the crown princess life or death have to do with you? Now that the rules of the cauldron have been broken, you can continue to be a glorious crown prince after you consume this grass. Don't you hate her so much that you want her to die? Now, isn't this more to your liking? Ji Yunhuang closed his eyes. Ning Xuema was right. He had always thought that he hated her so much that his teeth were itching. But he never thought that she would die. She never thought she would leave so soon. He thought that she would pester him for the rest of his life. He thought that their fates would never be separated. Who would have thought? It wasn't until the moment he saw her sink into the ground that his heart ached. Only then did he realize that she was like a wooden wedge that pierced into his heart. He could no longer pull it out. Unknowingly, his gaze had started to revolve around her. He thought that he had noticed her because he hated her too much, but he didn't know that this hatred was actually mixed with love. Because he loved her too much, he hated her. He hated her for using underhanded means to make him unable to leave her. He hated her for scheming so that she could become the crown princess. He knew that she loved him, but as proud as he was, how could he allow himself to be plotted against by her? As long as the incantation was not removed, he would feel uncomfortable and angry whenever he looked at her. That day he absent-mindedly accompanied Xueamo to teach her how to write. When the guard told him that the crown princess wanted to see him, his heart couldn't help but beat wildly. He was both excited and nervous. Ever since Ji Yunhuang and Xueamo got together, she never took the initiative to look for him again. This time she must be looking for him for something. She must be plotting something. Chapter 1135. Ji Yunhuang told himself over and over again that he could not be fooled by her. He could not be fooled by her. He tried his best to calm his wildly beating heart and calmly summon Tian Xueqing in. She was still wearing her sky-blue clothes, and her expression was distant and indifferent as she stood there. She indifferently said, Your Highness, I will remove the curse for you. At that moment he was both excited and disappointed. He deliberately said coldly, Why are you doing this? What are you plotting this time? Tian Xueqing only smiled faintly. Xueqing only wants to set your highness free. Seeing her smile, his heart suddenly ached. He thought that this was probably her plan to loosen the reins only to grasp them better. She knew that with this curse on him, she would not be able to obtain his heart. However, if she removed the curse, he might treat her well and grow old with her. Looking at her indifferent expression, he said dryly, After this matter is done, this prince will compensate you. Tian Xueqing only smiled faintly, All right. A light breeze blew past and she had a faint smile on her face. Her gaze was distant, and her blue dress fluttered in the wind. She looked like a fairy that had accidentally landed in the mortal world, and would leave with the wind at any time. Ji Yunhuang suddenly felt a sense of fear of losing her. He unconsciously promised, This prince will let you be this prince's crown prince consort for a lifetime. Tian Xueqing's gaze was still indifferent, and he did not know why, but he deliberately emphasized the words a lifetime, as if he naively believed that as long as she agreed, they would be together for a lifetime. From the beginning to the end, he did not touch Xueamo. He only treated her as a younger sister, a tool to stimulate Tian Xueqing. During the trip to the ice field, Tian Xueqing had suffered a lot for the serene orchid grass, but her expression had always been indifferent. Her gaze towards him did not have a trace of emotion. He was terrified, he was afraid that Tian Xueqing really did not have any feelings for him, so he used Shueimo to stimulate her and scold her. Looking at her occasionally revealing sadness, his heart ached terribly, but there was also a trace of joy. Her sadness proved that she still had feelings for him, but when she was sad, his heart also bled. Every moment was a torment of love and hate. He did not expect that she would be so determined to jump down to save Shueimo. At that moment, his heart almost stopped beating. While digging through the ground, he was so flustered that his entire body was trembling, and his mind was blank. However, he subconsciously thought that when she came out, he must tell her that he didn't care about the serene orchid grass or the ink. He only wanted her. He wanted her to stay by his side forever. The moment she rushed out, he almost wanted to kneel on the ground and thank the heavens. However, very soon she was caught by the tentacles. He wanted to drag her up, but his whole body was powerless as she slid down with him. Every word of hers pierced his heart, causing him so much pain that his entire body trembled. He couldn't say a single word and could only call out her name again and again with a pale face. He held onto her tightly as if he was holding on to the only salvation in his life. The moment she let go, he felt as if his entire world had instantly collapsed, falling apart. It was as if the one who had fallen into the endless abyss was not her, but himself. He had been abandoned by the entire world, and from then on, he could only spend his days in boundless darkness and pain. He dug 3 feet into the ground, but he could no longer find her and the endless tentacles. He thought that the venerable emperor would definitely be able to save Tian Xueqing, so he rushed back to the Sun-Moon sect as fast as lightning, but he kept hearing that the venerable emperor was busy. Chapter 1136. Thus he waited bitterly day after day. Day after day he was tormented by the pain. In his dreams, Tian Xueqing's green robe was stained with blood. She looked at him indifferently and said, "Let's not meet again in the next life." He missed her every day and was tormented every night. Ji Yunhuang finally recognized his feelings. He begged Shinjuli again and again, "Ancestor, I beg you. I beg you. I just want to see her one more time, see her one more time. Ancestor, please summon her soul." Shinjuli looked at him for a moment and sighed. Finally he nodded. He waved his hand and a white light condensed in his palm. The white light gradually became transparent and a strange scene flashed across it. Ji Yunhuang held his breath, afraid that he would disturb Shinjuli and let him accidentally miss it. After a long time, Shinjuli shook his head and said, "No." Ji Yunhuang held his breath and his face turned pale. "What do you mean no? Her soul is not there?" "What?" Shinjuli also seemed to be puzzled. After a long time he finally opened his mouth and said, "If her soul is not there, there can only be 2 possibilities. First, she is not dead. Second, her soul has already been scattered." Ji Yunhuang sat down on the ground and his face turned pale. He had seen Tian Xueqing being dragged into the ground with his own eyes. It was impossible for her to still be alive. Could it be that her soul had already been scattered? This thought made Ji Yunhuang's whole body tremble. Had she already completely disappeared from this world? No. Impossible. This can't be the result. He stood up and said crazily, "I don't believe it, I don't believe it. I don't believe that my fate is like this. I don't believe that Xueqing's fate is like this. I must have been cursed. Xueqing must still be somewhere. She must be waiting for me to save her somewhere. I must go and save her." He turned into a ray of white light and suddenly rushed out. In the blink of an eye he disappeared. Ning Xuema only felt that her heart had sunk into ice water. She sat on the chair motionlessly. Could it be that as long as they were her friends they would be unlucky? Yan Ziyuan jumped off the cliff with Yi Feng in her arms. Tian Xueqing was scared out of her wits. Ji Yunhuang was delirious. Was this a coincidence or was it that her fate as a cursed loner had unknowingly affected the people around her? She suddenly felt her entire body turn cold, so cold that even her soul was trembling. She wanted to jump up and hide in a place where no one was around. She couldn't get close to anyone, or that person would die. She did not know when Shinjuli had appeared beside her. He frowned when he saw her dazed look. He put a hand on her shoulder and said, "Shu." Ning Xuema murmured, "God, Tian Xueqing is also dead. Am I really a jinx?" Shinjuli touched her head. "Xuema, this has nothing to do with you." Ning Xuema suddenly tilted her head backwards, avoiding the great god's hand. She inwardly took a deep breath and forced a smile. Great God, she didn't know how to continue. She was so close to the god. Could it be that she also? This thought made her a little scared. She subconsciously distanced herself from the god. Shenjiuli's hand landed on empty air, so he slowly retracted his hand. He looked at her quietly. His gaze was like the surface of a lake with slight ripples in it. Although she hid it well, Shenjiuli could still read the uncertainty and faint fear in her eyes. He sighed again and raised his hand to hug her. Shuema, don't be afraid. Chapter 1137. Shenjiuli stroked her hair again and again, as if he was comforting a child who didn't know what to do. His voice was especially gentle at this moment. My destiny is hard, you can't subdue me. Ning Shuema suddenly felt a lump in her throat and almost cried, Guru! The feeling of being held in someone's arms and being comforted in a soft voice was so wonderful. It made her heart feel sour and bitter, but at the same time she was greatly touched. It was like a warm current slowly flowing into her heart, washing away her anxiety and uneasiness little by little, leaving only a sense of satisfaction and happiness. Ning Shuema tiptoed and gently kissed Shenjiuli. With a sigh she whispered, Guru, only you? She only had him. Shenjiuli responded by lowering his head, hugging her tightly and deepening the kiss. When the kiss ended, Ning Shuema's dark eyes finally had a glimmer of light. She leaned into Shenjiuli's arms. Guru, I only have you now. You're not allowed to leave me, you're not allowed to turn your back on me. You're not allowed to… something. She didn't say the last two words. Her coquettish tone made Shenjiuli couldn't help but kiss her again. He kissed her all over until she was out of breath. He lowered his head and solemnly said in her ear, Shuema, I will never turn my back on you. Ning Shuema leaned into Shenjiuli's arms. She smelled the cool fragrance on his body and listened to his steady and powerful heartbeat. Suddenly she felt sleepy. It was like a person who had walked in the desert for days and finally reached an oasis. While it was sweet and wonderful, it also gradually gave birth to a sense of exhaustion after a storm. However, the atmosphere now was so wonderful that she couldn't bear to fall asleep. Shenjiuli could tell that she was sleepy. He caressed her hair and said, I'll give you a day off today. Go and sleep. Then he carried her in a princess carry and sent her back to her room. Ning Shuema nestled in his arms at ease. Occasionally she would raise her eyes and see Shenjiuli's perfect side profile. Her heart was in a trance. She was really lucky to be able to make such an outstanding man fall so deeply in love with her. Most importantly, they loved each other deeply. She slowly closed her eyes and fell into a deep dream. Everything before him was pitch black. Ning Shuema seemed to have fallen into a bottomless abyss. She kept sinking until she sank into a dark end. She stood up and suddenly saw a little girl standing not far away in the middle of the black smoke. She was dressed in a bright red dress and was fair and tender. Her facial features could not be seen clearly, but based on his intuition, it should be an exquisite and sweet face. Judging from his figure, he seemed to be around 3 or 4 years old. A childish voice sounded, You're here. Ning Shuema took a step back to put some distance between them. She asked cautiously, Who are you? Why are you here? The little girl giggled like a little angel. However, in this empty and silent abyss, it seemed a little creepy. Finally she laughed enough and said sweetly, I am you. You and I are one. Ning Shuema's heart skipped a beat. Could this little girl be the demon that was causing trouble in her dantian? She was even more cautious, but she did not show it. She also revealed a relaxed smile. Whose child are you? Why are you talking nonsense? The little girl did not speak. She just tilted her head and looked at her with an innocent face, motionless. Ning Shuema just looked at her quietly with a calm face. She was actually thinking of a countermeasure and how to leave this place. She did not expect that the monster in her dantian would actually take a human form. This was not good news. Chapter 1138. The little girl curled her lips and squinted her eyes like a lazy kitten. Momo, you are me and I am you. Don't keep thinking about how to deal with me. Ning Shuema was startled. This brat knew how to read minds? The little girl stretched lazily and said impatiently, I said that I am you, so I know all of your thoughts. Don't try to avoid me. There was a hint of mockery in her playful voice. Ning Shuema did not say anything. She did not know what to do now. When the opponent knew all of your thoughts, it was definitely a terrifying thing. The little girl stretched out her small hand and grabbed a wisp of black gas and played with it. Her voice was still soft and childish with a hint of naivety. Momo, are you really not planning to leave the great god? You will jinx him to death. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat, but her expression was very calm. She tried her best to empty her mind and not think about anything. The little girl was stunned, then she clapped her hands and giggled. Momo is really smart, you can actually empty your mind. But it's useless, her sweet voice continued. Momo, look. First it was Yi Feng, then it was Yan Ziyuan, then it was Tian Xuecheng, then it was Ji Yun Huang. Her voice gradually became softer. Suddenly, her voice sounded like thunder and every word was frightening. Momo, who do you think is the next one? Who is the next one? Who is the next one? The thunderous voice replayed in Ning Xuema's ears again and again. Her body could not help but tense up and she was extremely nervous. She closed her eyes and retorted loudly, there is no next one. The little girl's voice was very strange, as if it directly sounded in her mind, making Ning Xuema unable to block her ears and refuse to listen. The voice became softer again and changed into a sweet child's voice, but it carried a devilish temptation. Momo, there are many people you care about. Who do you think is the next one? Is it Uncle Zhong? Tom? Or Shi Jue? Helian Shao? Or is he the sovereign of this world? He took you in as his disciple, got injured because of you, and had the closest relationship with you. Ning Xuema couldn't help but think of the Almighty's face. That voice suddenly screamed, it's him. Was him. He'll be the next one to die from your curse. Ning Xuema felt a knot in her heart. She was so shocked by the sound that she almost spat out a mouthful of blood. She took a deep breath and opened her eyes. She looked at the child and said coldly, I'm telling you I won't. The image of the Almighty holding her in his arms, combing her hair, and comforting her flashed through her mind. Xuema, don't be afraid. Her confidence was boosted, and a warm current flowed through her heart, as though it could cleanse the endless abyss. The little girl raised her eyebrows slightly and revealed a cute smile. Momo, let's wait and see. With a gentle wave of her hand, Ning Xuema felt her body become light and she slowly floated up. She floated higher and higher until she finally touched the light above her. She inadvertently lowered her head and saw the little girl in the abyss standing there quietly. Seeing Ning Xuema looking at her, she revealed a smile and moved her lips. Ning Xuema didn't need to read her lips to know what she was saying. Momo, let's wait and see. Ning Xuema suddenly woke up with a start and gasped for breath. Only then did she discover that her whole body was drenched in cold sweat. Chapter 1139. She slowly calmed down and used a cleansing spell to dry herself. Then she got up and poured herself a glass of water. While drinking the water, she sorted out her messy thoughts. The dream just now was still vivid in her mind. She remembered the little girl's words word for word. She said she was her. What did that mean? Was she suffering from schizophrenia? Impossible. Was this her inner demon? An inner demon that had materialized? Could it be that she was a jinx and had a destiny of being an axe soldier because of this little girl in her body? The more she thought about it, the more frightened she became. No, she had to discuss it with the Almighty tomorrow and let him take a look at her. But now she needed to rest first. Thinking of this, Ning Xuema slowly laid down on the bed. But when she closed her eyes, her soul seemed to sink. She was so frightened that she opened her eyes. She was definitely having a nightmare. She had to find the Almighty now. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. She ran out like a whirlwind and rushed to Shinjuli's main hall. When she reached the main hall, she was stunned. The main hall was still brightly lit. Did the Almighty not sleep? She walked in slowly and saw Shinjuli sitting cross-legged on the big bed. His eyes were slightly closed. There was a colorful light flowing around him, giving him a layer of holy light. The Almighty was meditating. It was better for her not to disturb the Almighty. Once a cultivator was disturbed, it was easy for him to go crazy. Ning Xuema knew this very well. She gently climbed to the other side of the bed and quietly hugged her knees as she looked at the Almighty's back. Anyway, she couldn't sleep now. Once she slept, she would see the weird little girl teasing her. She might as well cultivate with the Almighty. She looked at the Almighty's back view and nodded slowly. Eventually she fell asleep. Someone gently laid her down and covered her with a blanket. He sighed softly in her ear, "Silly child." She unconsciously reached out her hand and mumbled, "Almighty?" Shinjuli grabbed her hand and said softly, "I'm here." Hearing this response, Ning Xuema finally felt relieved. She found a comfortable position in his arms and fell asleep. Shinjuli hugged her and flicked off the lights. He had a dreamless night. When Ning Xuema opened her eyes, she saw a field of snow white. She was stunned for a moment. She raised her head and was met with a pair of deep blue eyes. "You're awake?" Shinjuli asked quietly, holding a strand of her hair in his hand. Ning Xuema was a little dazed from her sleep. She had an ignorant look on her face and looked particularly easy to bully. Shinjuli's eyes darkened. He hugged her and kissed her on the lips. He did not hesitate to give her a French kiss. When the kiss ended, Ning Xuema was still in a daze. "Guru, why are you on my bed?" Shinjuli was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and would pounce on her one day, so they had been sleeping in separate rooms. Shinjuli's eyes had a touch of amusement. He said with a faint smile, "Who climbed onto my bed in the middle of the night when I was meditating? Then you slept like a little dead pig." Ning Xuema then remembered that she had rushed over last night. She wanted to cultivate with the Almighty, but she didn't expect to fall asleep first. She couldn't help but blush. She coughed softly, cough cough that. Shinjuli's eyes had a deeper smile. He couldn't help but tease her, "Can't resist your yearning?" Chapter 1140. Ning Xuema glared at him, coughed lightly and got up from the bed. She always felt that when talking in bed, the topic would uncontrollably drift in a certain direction, and then it would get out of hand. After sitting up, she finally remembered her purpose of coming here. She said seriously, "Almighty, I have something important to tell you." Shinjuli finally got up lazily. With his movements, his collar was slightly messy, revealing his white jade-like chest. His voice carried a unique laziness when he just woke up. "What's the matter? Almighty, you evildoer. Can't you tidy up your clothes a bit?" Ning Xuema glanced at him and then looked away. She was almost seduced by the Almighty to the point that she forgot her business. She sorted out the messy thoughts in her head and said seriously, "Almighty, I had a dream last night." She recounted the conversation she had with the little girl last night without holding anything back. Shinjuli's expression slowly became serious. Without waiting for her to finish, he pulled her wrist and quietly took her pulse. After a while, he let go of her hand and said calmly, "It's nothing. It's just an inner demon." Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Inner demon? What inner demon? Shinjuli patted her head and took advantage of the opportunity to pull her down. Every immortal cultivator will have an inner demon before breaking through to Earth rank level 8. Master will teach you a set of mental cultivation methods. Come, sleep with Master for a while. Ning Xuema, come, sleep with Master for a while. Almighty, don't you think that your words are shocking? Whose disciple has the ability to sleep with others? Was strange. Ning Xuema had just woken up, but in the Almighty's arms she fell into a deep sleep again. Shinjuli looked at her in his arms with a serious expression. He didn't expect that the inner demon in her body had already materialized. At this time, Ning Xuema was already asleep. Naturally, the inner demon in her body was also asleep. He hadn't prepared all the ingredients yet, so he couldn't awaken the inner demon in her. His hand was as fast as lightning, and he tapped on one of her acupuncture points. A ray of white light slowly seeped in and gradually disappeared. After doing all this, Shinjuli let out a long sigh of relief. Looking at her relaxed sleeping face, the expression in his eyes changed several times, as if he had to make a difficult decision. In the end he sighed softly. "I can't drag this out any longer." When Ning Xuema woke up again, the Almighty was not by her side. She felt that she was about to go crazy from sleeping, so she left the main hall and strolled around outside. Sunset clouds filled the sky above Heavenly Sound Peak, but Ning Xuema couldn't find the great deity anywhere. In the end, when she arrived at Luoying Cliff, she saw the great deity standing there. His white robe was loose and fluttering in the wind. His back was facing her, as if he could leave with the wind at any moment. Ning Xuema pursed her lips and stepped forward to stand beside the Almighty. "Almighty, is there something on your mind?" Shinjuli put his arm around her waist and looked at her. "No," he said. After a while, Shinjuli spoke again. He stroked her hair and said lightly, "Xuema, I have to go on a long trip." Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. "Where are you going?" "I'll go with you." Shinjuli paused for a moment and continued to comb her hair. "No, only I can go there. Your skills are still too weak to go. You have to stay at the Tianyin Peak. You can't go anywhere, understand?" Ning Xuema looked up at him and stared into his eyes. "Is it very dangerous?" Shinjuli patted her head and nodded silently. Ning Xuema tightened her grip on the Almighty's robe. She took a deep breath and asked, "When will you be back?" Chapter 1141. Shinjuli muttered, "Half a month at most." All right, half a month wasn't too long. She would just wait here. Her gaze fell on Shinjuli. How many attendants did you bring? She would feel more at ease if there were more people. Shinjuli shook his head slightly. Only I can go to that place. No one else can enter. Don't worry, I know what to do. Since he said this, Ning Xuema could only nod her head. All right, you have to come back in one piece. Shinjuli couldn't help but smile. Of course. The thing that wants to make me incomplete hasn't been born yet. This sentence was very imposing, but it also made Ning Xuema feel more at ease. She knew that he was telling the truth. In this world, she really hadn't seen anyone who could be his opponent. Although it was a lonely world without opponents, it could make his family feel at ease and know that he would be fine. She hugged his arm and leaned her head on his shoulder. I believe you. I'll wait for you to come back. I'll wait for you to come back. It was just a few simple words, but it made Shinjuli's heart feel warm. All these years, no matter where he went, he came and went alone. He never said hello to anyone and he never made anyone wait for him. He was as free as the wind. But now there was a tie, a warm tie. This kind of tie finally gave birth to a kind of desire. He longed to come back before he even set off. He lowered his eyes to look at her. She had been hugging his arm tightly as if he would disappear immediately. There was even a hint of sadness in her bright eyes. He couldn't help but laugh. Don't you want to keep a little distance from me? Don't you want a little private space occasionally? Ah, that's true. Ning Xuema let go of his arm and patted him on the shoulder like a brother. Go Dizun. Go find what you want to find. The flowers haven't bloomed yet, so you can slowly return. Shinjuli was speechless. He casually pulled her into his embrace, and there was a hint of a smile in his eyes. Do you miss me so much that you can't sleep? The great god also knows how to tease? You know how to say sweet nothings now. Ning Xuemo raised her hand and rubbed his chin. Then she raised her fingertips. It was the standard gesture of a young ruffian teasing a virtuous woman. However, she was a little shorter than Dizun, so it was a little difficult for her to do this. Guru, after you leave, I will eat and sleep well. I will live my own personal world well. She actually liked being alone. Being alone was as free as the wind, and she could go wherever she wanted. He was extraordinarily independent. She didn't know when it started, but as long as she was by his side, she couldn't help but want to lean on him and snuggle up to him. It turned out that when love came, even a strong and independent woman would want a warm embrace to shelter her from the wind and rain. Even she herself didn't believe that there would be a day when she would be like a little bird that relied on others. However, she naturally showed it when she was beside him. She didn't feel uncomfortable at all and didn't feel out of place at all. It was as if this was how it should be. These days she had been sticking to the great god. They really didn't separate day and night. Other than real physical intimacy, they did everything that couples should do. She really couldn't stand being together all day long. Now that the great god was going to leave for half a month, she really had to plan this half a month and make it more meaningful. She was thinking about what to do in this half a month when Shinjuli patted her head and glanced at her. What are you thinking about? Chapter 1142. I'm thinking about what I should do in this half a month. There seems to be a lot of things to do. I haven't taken a good look around the Sun Moon sect or chatted with the junior disciples. I haven't even met all the senior disciples. This time I want to visit all of them. Ning Xuema counted with her fingers. After counting, she suddenly felt that half a month wasn't enough. Great God, you don't have to rush this time. You don't have to worry about me. It's fine even if it takes another 10 days or half a month. Ning Xuema generously gave him more time. Shinjuli was speechless. He raised his hand and knocked on her head. What are you thinking about? In the half a month when I'm not here, you have to practice hard. You're not allowed to leave the heavenly sound peak. You have to master the heart technique that I taught you. When I come back, I'll check on your homework. If I find out that you're disobedient, I have ways to punish you. Ning Xuema placed a hand on his shoulder and leaned on him. What kind of punishment? Ning Xuema asked. What punishment? Shinjuli held her mischievous hand and narrowed his eyes. He seemed to be threatening and teasing her at the same time. I'll torture you until you're better off dead. This sentence could be interpreted in several ways. Ning Xuema suddenly remembered that these days, the great god had some bad habits when they were together. Her heart trembled. The great god looked calm and untainted. In fact, once the great god let loose, he was really unrestrained. Especially when he was with her, his tricks were too much for her to handle. Other than that last step, she had already been devoured by him until there was nothing left of her, not even the dregs of tofu left. Ning Xuema was naturally not a passive person. Her eyes moved and her lips curled into a smile. She suddenly raised her head and hugged his neck. She gently bit his earlobe. Great God, if I listen to you obediently, what kind of reward will you give me when you come back? Her warm breath lingered in his ears as her small white teeth bit his earlobe. It was slightly painful and ticklish, but that ticklish feeling almost reached his heart. It made him feel as if there was an electric current flowing through his body, and his lower abdomen felt bloated and painful. His eyes deepened, and he pulled this coquettish little demoness off his body. With a casual press, he pressed her down on the stone table beside him. He leaned over and looked into her eyes. What reward do you want? His voice was slightly hoarse. Ning Xuema blinked. A reward? Let me think. She was deep in thought when she suddenly thought of something. Great God, the congealed frost fruit on the crimson afterglow peak tastes pretty good. Why don't you bring it back as a reward for me? Shinjuli, this bad girl? She had clearly brought up an ambiguous topic and looked like she was going to tease him. Yet, the topic of conversation suddenly changed to this. He smiled and touched her red lips with his finger. Good. If you're obedient, not only will I bring you the congealed frost fruit, I will also give you a mysterious reward. How about that? What mysterious reward? Ning Xuema grabbed his hand. Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed, but you will definitely remember it for the rest of your life. Shinjuli kept her in suspense. Alright. The great God always liked to keep people in suspense. If he didn't say anything, even if you used torture, you wouldn't be able to force him to say it. So Ning Xuema didn't ask any more questions. The two of them were silent for a while. They both knew that they were going to separate. Although they didn't say anything, there were traces of sorrow that began to spread. Ning Xuema held his hand and interlocked their fingers. Great God, come back soon. Chapter 1143. Don't run around and don't leave the Tianyin Peak. If you're bored, wait for me to come back and bring you there. Shinjuli couldn't help but remind her again. Ning Xuema burst out laughing. Guru, you're so long-winded too. He was treating her like a child, but it still made her feel warm and touched. Shinjuli was silent for a moment, then he finally said, Xuema, wait for me. Ning Xuema nodded and said seriously, I'll be right here and won't run around. I'll practice diligently and wait for you to come back. On the first day after the guru left, Ning Xuema felt like she was finally free. She practiced for the whole morning and took a nap. In the afternoon, she called Yelu Jing up and chatted with him for a while to understand the situation in the Sun Moon sect. She slept alone at night and didn't run to the guru's bedroom to say goodnight like before. She wasn't used to it, but she just smiled and rolled around on the bed. She said, the feeling of freedom is really good. Then she lay down and fell asleep. She didn't have any dreams until the next morning. The next day, she looked at the sun that had risen high in the sky and was a little stunned. Then she jumped up again. Too late. Too late. The guru asked her to wake up at dawn every day to report to him for practice. Now it was the end of the morning and she was late for almost 4 hours. She would be punished by the guru. She packed up quickly like a whirlwind, but when she was about to rush out of the door, she suddenly remembered that the guru had left and wouldn't supervise her anymore. She heaved a sigh of relief and slowly ran to the practice field. She practiced there for a while and it was already noon. She was quite careless with her practice that day, so she took it as a holiday for herself. When it was time to sleep at night, she said good night to herself and lay down to sleep. Speaking of which, it was strange. At first, she was afraid that the weird little girl in her dantian would pull her into some void to cause trouble, but she slept peacefully for 2 days. That little bastard didn't come to disturb her again, which made her very relieved. On the 3rd day, she didn't wake up early. She got out of bed lazily and dressed herself lazily. She didn't know why, but everything she did was a little emotionless and she couldn't lift her spirits. After she finished practicing, she couldn't help but run to the Almighty's bedroom to take a look. Then he ran to his practice room and began to practice his mental cultivation method. Just like that, another day passed. The 4th day, the 5th day, the 6th day, and even the 7th day she continued to work and rest as usual, but she couldn't help but count the days with her fingers. His concern was like the land after the spring breeze, sprouting green buds of longing and spreading. On the 8th day she finally couldn't help but take out the voice transmission talisman. She picked it up, put it down and picked it up again. In the end he put it away. The Almighty had said that the place he was going to was a forbidden area, and the voice transmission talisman would not be able to reach him. Even if she could contact him, Ning Xuema had no intention of contacting him. What if the Almighty was fighting with a certain fiend? If she contacted him blindly, he would be distracted. Time flowed like water, slowly slipping away as she waited. When it was close to half a month, she suddenly wished that time would flow slower. In the deepest part of her heart, she was afraid that he wouldn't come back. The feeling of freedom that she felt when he first left was long gone. There was only a heavy longing and a heavy worry. The Almighty would come back. The Almighty would be fine. Perhaps when she woke up, the Almighty would look at her from her bedside and then wake her up to practice. Chapter 1144. She comforted herself like this every night before she went to bed. However, when she woke up the next day, she was disappointed to see an empty house. "Guru, I've been waiting here for you to come back. Why haven't you come back yet?" "Heavenly Lone Star, you're a heavenly Lone Star. Your friends and family will all die because of you. You'll always be alone." A childish voice rang out in his mind. It was a voice that sounded childish and tempting. "That's not true. That was all nonsense. I don't believe such a thing." Another voice in his head refuted subconsciously. "You don't believe it? Then are Yi Feng and Yan Ziyuan dead? Is Tian Shuiqing dead? They died because of you. They didn't have a good ending because of you." "Bullshit. Shut up. Their deaths were just a coincidence. I tried my best. Your friends are like quicksand. The tighter you hold on to them, the harder it is to hold on to them. Poor child, you have indeed tried your best, but your efforts will only accelerate their tragedy. Why don't you let them go? Turn into a demon, hand you over to me, and I will be able to change your fate. You will become happy and you will no longer have any worries." The voice guided him patiently. "Dream on. Dream on. What kind of monster are you? Get the hell out of there." Ning Xuema screamed as she woke up from her nightmare drenched in sweat. She sat up abruptly. The demonic voice finally disappeared from her head. She took a deep breath. Her fingers touched her dantian. Her fingertips were slightly cold. There was a monster living inside her, a demon-like child. The child's voice started to appear in her head frequently a few days ago. She had used her inner vision to check many times, but she couldn't see the child. She could only see a chaotic darkness. It was as boundless as the end of the world. It made her feel frightened. The Guru said that she had a demon in her heart. As long as she practiced diligently, she would be able to get rid of the demon. However, these days she had a feeling that the demon was getting stronger. There were a few times when she felt like she was in a dream. It annoyed her to no end. She jumped out of bed, washed up a little, and went out. The scenery outside the door was still the same. The trees, the courtyard, the mountain rocks. Every blade of grass, every tree, every pavilion, and every courtyard were as beautiful as a painting, but she had no interest in admiring them. It had been a month. The Almighty had been gone for a month. There was no news from him for a month. No matter how she tried to contact him, she couldn't get in touch with him, and she could only be trapped on the heavenly sound peak, unable to do anything. Every day, other than cultivating, she could only stroll around the heavenly sound peak, unable to go anywhere else. In the beginning, she was worried that if she blindly contacted him, it would distract him. She might even be in danger, so she suppressed her emotions and waited patiently every day. However, after half a month, she began to lose her cool and began to try to contact him using the sound transmission talisman. However, he couldn't get in touch with her, and she didn't seem to want to pick up. What happened to him? Could it be that he had encountered a great danger? Could it be that his life was in danger? All kinds of worries came one after another, making her restless day and night. However, at this time, the demon in her heart was getting stronger day by day. If her mind wavered a little, it would take advantage of the situation and make her even more confused. She went to the Almighty's bedroom and everything in the palace was still the same. Chapter 1145. The utensils used by the Almighty were still shiny and clean as if he had never left them. Ning Xuema picked one up and started to wipe it. This was a task she had recently found for herself. She had to have something to do to pass the time. Shinjuli, the most powerful person in the continent, was the only man who was not afraid of her terrifying fate. He was so strong and powerful that no one in the world was his match. He should not have encountered any real danger, right? Perhaps he did not return because he had not found what he wanted. As long as he found it, he would come back. That must be it. Do you really think he will come back? Maybe he is already dead. Otherwise, if he promised you that he would come back in half a month, why is he still not back after a month? Even if he could not find what he wanted, he should be able to send you a message when he is free, right? But he did not. Something must have happened to him. Perhaps he was cursed to death by you? Ah, you are a jinx. Since he was so good to you, he will naturally die. The voice in her mind sounded again with a hint of schadenfreude. Get lost. Ning Xuema was annoyed. She waved her hand and a utensil fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Ning Xuema was speechless. She looked at the utensil. It was a porcelain vase. She had made it a few days ago and placed it on the table. She did not expect that she would smash it into pieces today. Even if it was sticky, it would not stick. Is this a sign? An ominous sign. Maybe he is really dead. The voice sounded again. Ning Xuema took a deep breath. Suddenly, she raised her hand and swept an inkstone off the table, causing it to fall to the ground and shatter into pieces. She raised her head and smiled. It was as if she was refuting the voice that appeared in her mind, but it was also as if she was comforting herself. You will be fine. She closed her eyes and used the mental cultivation method that the Almighty taught her to suppress her inner demons. After a while, she finally calmed down. She squatted down and started to clean up the broken pieces. The Almighty loved cleanliness. If he came back and saw the broken pieces, he would not be able to sleep well. When she was cleaning up the broken pieces, she cut her hand again. The wound was not big, but it made her dazed for a moment. Everything seemed to be going wrong today. Did something really happen to the Almighty? This thought was like a fire. Once it was born, it would become a prairie fire. Her fingers trembled slightly as she tried her best to stabilize her emotions. The great God had said that her fate was special and that she had a physique that could easily attract disasters. Therefore, before he left, he repeatedly ordered her not to leave the Tianin Peak. He also instructed his 5 disciples to watch over her at all times, afraid that she would accidentally cause any accidents when he was not around. She didn't want to worry the Almighty, so she endured it and stayed on the peak day after day. She really wanted to find the Almighty, but she didn't know where he had gone. She could only wait helplessly. She felt like she was going to turn into a stone waiting for her husband. After cleaning up the debris on the ground, she wiped the other things again. When he was by her side, she didn't feel that time was unbearable, but after he left, she felt a bone-piercing loneliness and longing. She had never been so concerned about someone in her life. It turned out that worrying about someone was so unsettling that it was hard to calm down. Seeing that it was dark outside, she took out the sound-transmitting talisman and tried to contact him again. Still, it was to no avail. The sound-transmitting talisman didn't light up at all. Chapter 1146. Great God. Shinjuli, regardless of whether you found that thing or not, at least send me a message. Even if it's just a hey, it's fine. As long as I know that you're safe, why won't you say a word to me? She simply lay on Shinjuli's bed. Her eyes were wide open, but she didn't dare to sleep. Now, as long as she closed her eyes, she would dream and be harassed by her inner demons. There seemed to be a slight noise at the door. Her heart jumped, and she immediately turned around to look. Then, she held her breath. The door creaked open and a white figure stood at the door. The moonlight gilded his back with a layer of faint silver, and his handsome face was half hidden in the darkness. Although Ning Xuema couldn't see his face clearly, she could recognize him from his figure and temperament. Shinjuli. He finally came back. He still knew to come back. At this moment, Ning Xuema's mind was blown. She was ecstatic, but her heart was filled with grievances. Her nose was sour and tears welled up in her eyes. Did he know that she was worried to death? Did he know that she was almost crazy from worrying about him? Did he know that she missed him so much that she almost broke down? Before she could think of what to do, she had already jumped up from the bed and fiercely threw herself at him. Great God! Why did you come back? She wanted to fiercely shout a few words at him, but just as she said one sentence, her throat seemed to be choked and she couldn't continue. She directly threw herself into his arms and desperately hugged his waist. Tears flowed down her cheeks and her nose couldn't breathe. Why did you come back so late? Do you know that I was worried to death? With great difficulty, she suppressed her grievances and wanted to shout a few words at him, but her body stiffened, and she suddenly opened her eyes wide. A sword. A sword the color of the moonlight. It fiercely pierced through her chest, accurately pierced through her heart, and came out from her back. That sword was extremely sharp and was a gift from her to him. He had always kept it with him, but now it had become the culprit behind her assassination. The sword was so sharp that she didn't even feel it when it pierced her flesh. By the time she reacted, she was already skewered on his sword like a candied hawthorn. The delayed pain made her face turn pale, and her eyes widened in disbelief. His face was reflected in her eyes. She finally saw his face clearly and her heart felt as if it had been thrown into ice water. Wumo. The person who came was not Shinjioli, but his former substitute Wu Mo. Wu Mo's figure was exactly the same as Shinjioli's. Even their facial features were almost the same. They were at least 99% similar. If one wasn't the person closest to them, it would be hard to tell them apart when they stood together. The only difference between these two people was that Wu Mo was always expressionless. When his sword pierced through Ning Xuema's body, he didn't even move his eyebrows. He was as cold as a statue. As for Shinjioli, although he was also incomparably cold, he often had some expressions on his face. Ning Xuema had been with him for a long time, so she could tell at a glance. When Wu Mo was punished by Shinjioli and imprisoned in the underground cold prison, Ning Xuema and the Almighty had almost forgotten the existence of this person after they met. She occasionally asked who this Wu Mo was, and the Almighty's answer was somewhat zen. He said that Wu Mo was the one who had been with him for the longest time. Since he could remember, Wu Mo had been by his side as his substitute. Other than that, there was no further explanation. Chapter 1147. The Almighty's explanation was ambiguous. Later on, because of other things, she forgot to ask him again. Later on, when she thought about it, she felt that since Wu Mo had been by the Almighty's side for as long as he could remember, and the two of them looked so similar, there was only one possibility. Wu Mo was the Almighty's twin brother. She did not know why, but he only wanted to be the Almighty's substitute. Later on, because too many things happened and the Almighty urged her to practice martial arts, she didn't have the time to think about Wu Mo. She only knew that he was punished by the Almighty and was locked up. She didn't expect that he would appear here today. She thought that the Almighty had finally returned. She was so excited that she didn't think twice before throwing herself at him. She was anxious to hug him and feel his real body to soothe her surging emotions. She didn't expect that he would be a substitute. She also didn't expect that he would assassinate her without saying a word. This sword was ruthless and didn't give her any chance to live. It was obvious that Wu Mo really wanted to kill her. At that moment, Ning Xuema couldn't think too much. Fortunately, she used to be a secret agent and had a strong psychological quality. She could quickly calm down when she received a fatal blow. Almost instinctively, she slapped him with her palm, using the empty-handed blade block technique to attack him. Wu Mo probably didn't expect that she could still fight back when her heart was stabbed. Moreover, her attack was aimed at the enemy's vital point. The angle was tricky and the palm was strong. Even if Wu Mo was in a hurry, he couldn't block her attack. He subconsciously let go of his hand and took a step back. Ning Xuema also took a few steps back when he let go of her hand. Blood flowed down the sword and dripped on the clean floor like blooming red spider lilies. Her face was deathly pale. She pressed her palm on the hilt of the moonlight sword. She was a doctor herself, so she naturally knew the consequences of being stabbed. Her heart meridian had been pierced, and her life was like a flickering candle flame in the wind, about to be extinguished at any time. Why do you want to kill me? This was what she didn't understand the most. She didn't have any deep hatred with him, right? Although he gave her a lot of problems when he pretended to be Shinjioli, he didn't mean to kill her. What was the reason this time? What was the reason for him to use his ultimate move on her as soon as they met? Why was the Almighty's moonlight sword in his hands? Thousands of questions swirled in her mind. After she asked this question, she quietly moved to the window. Since Wu Mo was standing at the door, she could only escape through the window if she wanted to ask for help. Unfortunately, the window was tightly shut. She had no choice but to break the window and jump out to call for help. But would she have the chance? She had yet to cultivate an immortal body, and the sword in her heart only had the word, death. The reason why she could still stand here and not fall was because the sword had yet to be pulled out. Once the sword was pulled out, she would definitely die. That empty-handed blade block had almost used up all of her strength. Her vision was turning black and there was a fishy taste in her mouth. Wu Mo looked at her coldly, but he did not follow up with another attack. He knew that with the power of his sword, she would not be able to survive. Hearing her question, he only coldly replied, "You must die. I can't let you harm him anymore." Was it because of her identity as a heavenly loner? Ning Xuema took another step back, her face as pale as a sheet of paper. Chapter 1148. Ning Xuema's eyes darkened. Where is he? Why is his sword in your hands? Even if you kill me, he won't let you go? She stumbled again and held onto the window for support. Wu Mo's eyes were as cold as ice and his thin lips slightly pursed. No matter where he is, it has nothing to do with you anymore. Go on your way and don't bother him in your next life. He approached Ning Xuema step by step. He didn't expect this girl to be so tenacious. Even with a sword in her heart, she could still talk so much nonsense. Perhaps he should give her another blow to shut her up. His fingers emitted a faint white light and in a blink of an eye, it turned into the shape of a sword. Ning Xuema held onto the window with her hand, but her heart was cold. In such a short time, her hands and feet had lost all their strength. Not to mention breaking the window, she couldn't even push it with all her might, her vision blurred and she couldn't even stand straight. Tianyin Peak was the forbidden area of the Sun Moon sect. All the disciples were not allowed to come up. Now there was only her and Wu Mo. Even if she was lucky enough to escape from this hall, how could she escape from Wu Mo's pursuit? If she was fine with her current martial arts, she might be able to deal with Wu Mo for a while. At least, she could delay until reinforcements arrived. But now she only felt despair. She had never felt so hopeless before. She didn't expect that she would die here today. Xin Juli's figure flashed in her mind. Her fingers clenched again. She didn't even see him again. What happened to him? She looked on helplessly as the sword in Wu Mo's hand took shape again and was about to stab her again. She closed her eyes and waited for the fatal blow. Bang! The tightly closed window suddenly shattered. The shattering of the window was very unique. All the fragments were like whistling rain, bypassing Ning Xuema who was in front of the window and shooting towards Wu Mo. Wu Mo's expression changed slightly. The sword in his hand flashed continuously and set up a protective shield around his body, blocking the fragments that were flying towards him like a storm. In the chaos of the fragments, he only saw a red shadow flash past the window. When he hurriedly threw away the broken pieces and looked at the window again, his pupils suddenly shrank. Not only was there no trace of the red-robed man in front of the window, there was also no trace of Ning Xuema. Only the broken window was like a huge mouth as if it was laughing at him. That woman must not be taken away. She must not be allowed to live. Wu Mo's silhouette rose, and he went out of the window like a drifting cloud. The grass and trees in the courtyard were the same as before, but he couldn't see any shadow of a person. There was a wizardry barrier on the mountain peak. Only disciples of Shinjuli could come and go as they pleased. That person wasn't from the Sun Moon sect. He couldn't have left without making a sound after kidnapping Ning Xuema. Wu Mo quickly circled around the Tianyin Peak. He didn't find the two people, but he found a gap in a hidden corner. There were a few drops of blood on the gap as if it was telling him something. Wu Mo's fingers slowly clenched. Did he run away? However, that woman's heart had been fatally stabbed by him. Even if she was taken away, she wouldn't be able to survive. Ning Xuema felt dizzy, but she subconsciously knew that someone had saved her. At this moment, that person was carrying her and escaping. That person's speed was extremely fast. Ning Xuema was in a state of dizziness. She only felt a burst of light and shadow, and the sound of the wind was sharp like a whistle in her ears. However, she couldn't feel it blowing on her body. Chapter 1149. That person hugged her very skillfully and did not touch her wound at all. Yet, he held her firmly in his arms as if he was hugging a treasure that he had lost and regained. She felt dizzy and had a feeling that she was about to fall into the abyss. Her hands and feet were cold as if her soul was gradually leaving her body and was about to scatter. She tried her best to open her eyes, fearing that she would never be able to open them again and fall into eternal darkness. She couldn't die. She desperately told herself in her heart. She still didn't know the Almighty's whereabouts. She didn't want to step on the road to hell with regrets. Although she tried to open her eyes, her vision was constantly turning black and everything was blurry. She could only see balls of light. She couldn't tell the color of the light as it jumped around in front of her eyes. It was like a dream. Who was it that saved her? The first person she thought of was the Almighty. The moment she fell into his arms, she even called out softly, "Almighty." Her voice was as soft as a mosquito, but it made the person hugging her slightly stiffen. At that moment, she knew that it wasn't him, it wasn't the Almighty. The Almighty wouldn't escape with her. If he really came back, he would use ruthless means to deal with Wu Mo. Then who could it be? Who could save her from Wu Mo so easily? She couldn't see anything clearly and her nose couldn't even smell anything. All her senses seemed to have lost their functions quickly, making her unable to determine who saved her. However, no matter who saved her at this time, it was better than dying in Wu Mo's hands. Her heart was in pain and she couldn't help but move her body. Momo, don't move. A voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Ning Xuema's body suddenly stiffened and her eyes that were about to close opened again. Shuilan. It was actually Shuilan. Heavens, if she were to fall into his hands she might as well die. Perhaps because he saw her suddenly widening eyes, Shuilan's arms slightly tightened. Momo, don't be afraid. I won't hurt you in the slightest. His voice was magnetic and gentle as the first stream in March. How could Ning Xuema believe him? She always felt that she couldn't do anything about being in his hands. She was so anxious that her vision turned black and she fainted. She had another dream. In the dream she directly turned into a woman called Shui Yemo, and took advantage of the night to meet with a man from the devil realm. That man urged her to move faster and even showed her a mirror. In the mirror Shui Yilan was on the verge of death. His face was as pale as a ghost. The man told her that Shui Yilan only had half a month left to live. If she couldn't get that thing, Shui Yilan's soul would scatter. The man from the devil realm then left. Shui Yemo turned around and returned. She was preoccupied with her makeup in front of the mirror. Shun Jiuli appeared behind her and skillfully combed her hair. Seeing that she was absent-minded, he asked her what was on her mind. Shui Yemo turned around and threw herself into his arms. Like a child, she arched against his chest and asked him jokingly, "Jiuli, how much do you like me?" Shun Jiuli looked down at her and rubbed her head. "Every time you act like a spoiled child in front of me, you want something. Tell me, what do you want now?" Shui Yemo blinked her eyes and pointed at his chest. She said confidently, "I want your heart. Will you give it to me or not?" Chapter 1150. Shun Jiuli took advantage of the situation and pulled her into his arms, kissing her lips. "Isn't my heart already yours?" Shui Yemo hugged his neck and held his hand, kissing him again. "Let's make it clear, your heart is mine. You're not allowed to give it to anyone else." The two rubbed each other's ears for a while. Shui Yemo seemed to have thought of something and pursed her lips. "However, I heard that gods have 9 lives. In other words, you have 9 hearts. If you give me one, you'll have no place to put the other 8. Shun Jiuli bluntly knocked her forehead. "You're talking about cats. Cats have 9 lives. Little girl, don't use idioms." Shui Yemo chuckled. "So you're talking about cats. But if cats have 9 lives, then aren't you more powerful than cats, Jiuli? How many lives do you have?" Shun Jiuli picked her up and walked outside. "Gods don't age or die. How many lives do you think I have?" Shui Yemo's eyes moved slightly. She yawned lazily and hugged his neck like a lazy kitten. "Countless. It's good to be a god, to have countless lives to play with." The two chatted and laughed. She let him carry her away. After a moment, she looked around in puzzlement. "Jiuli, where are you taking me?" Shun Jiuli kept her in suspense. "Yes." The pond full of green lotuses bloomed. Shun Jiuli led her to a lotus path. At the end of the lotus path, there were beautiful jellyfish swaying back and forth. "The scenery here is so beautiful." She couldn't help but dance in circles on the lotus. Shun Jiuli held her hand and stepped on the jellyfish. "There's something even more beautiful." Finally, Shui Yemo saw a jellyfish-shaped dark blue dreamlike castle. She was stunned for a moment, as if she was looking at a childhood dream. "Jiuli, so you also have such childish taste?" Shun Jiuli's eyebrows twitched. He glanced at her. "Didn't you say you didn't have a childhood? Didn't you say you didn't know what a childhood dream was like?" Shui Yemo was stunned for a moment. "So you prepared this castle for me? Do you like it?" Shun Jiuli looked down at her condescendingly with an expression that said, "Try saying you don't like it." Shui Yemo didn't say anything. Instead, she threw herself on his body and kissed him on the lips. Then she buried her head in his chest and muttered something. Shun Jiuli obviously didn't hear him clearly. "What did you say?" Shui Yemo once again hugged his neck. I like it so much." Shun Jiuli carried her in contentedly. "It's good that you like it. Today is your birthday, so this is my birthday present to you." The scenery inside the blue castle was magnificent and full of childlike charm. Shui Yemo looked here and there, and from time to time she would turn in circles on the spot like a child. Shun Jiuli sat on the cloud bed and looked at her with a faint smile on his lips. "Jiuli, let's live here from now on, okay?" Shui Yemo jumped in front of him and looked at him with sparkling eyes, as if she was afraid he wouldn't agree. "The spiritual energy here is extraordinarily abundant. Let's cultivate here." Shun Jiuli pulled her onto the bed. The moment he kissed her deeply, he replied with a single word, "Okay." Time passed in the blink of an eye. Ning Xuema felt like she was in a dream, yet not a dream. In the dream she seemed to be Shui Yimo and Shui Yimo was her. She and Xinjili spent a good time in that castle. The two of them lay side by side on the cloud bed and looked at the stars. They watched the clouds in the sky move and move. They sat together on the cloud bed and cultivated. Of course they loved each other. Chapter 1151. Occasionally when Xinjili was in a good mood he would fish for her, comb her hair, cook all kinds of delicious food for her, and even condense 2 kitchen knives to cut vegetables and meat. That was the life of a true husband and wife. That kind of time could only be described with one word: sweet and sweet. Scenes of happy life were like fast-forwarded movies, playing out one after another. Ning Xuema was almost intoxicated in that kind of life. Of course, Ning Xuema also felt that she was drifting away. For example, although she had transformed into Shui Yimo, she could never understand her feelings. She always felt that Shui Yimo seemed to have a lot of things on her mind, but she hid it very well so it couldn't be seen from her appearance. Finally, one day Xinjili received a message from his disciple. The immortal world's emissary wanted to see him, saying that the devil ancestor had led a group of demons to wantonly invade the immortal world. They asked the supreme divinity to once again kill the devil ancestor and get rid of evil for the 3 realms. Can you not go? Shui Yimo hugged his arm, obviously not wanting him to go. Xinjili rubbed her hair. I owe the immortal world 2 favors and I've already repaid them once. This is the last time. Obediently wait for me here, I'll be back in half a day. Then I'll go too. Shui Yimo's attitude was firm. Xinjili looked down at her as if he wanted to see something in her eyes. Her eyes were clear, more transparent than crystals, and she insisted, I must go. Good. Xinjili finally agreed. You tidy up, this king will wait for you outside. Shui Yimo waited for Xinjili to go out, then quickly began to tidy up the things in the castle. She even put away the 2 kitchen knives and put them in the side room. She paused in the room for a moment, then turned around and strode out. The wind and rain were gloomy and dark clouds covered the sky. In the wilderness, the people of the immortal world and the devil world were fighting fiercely. The sound of the zither came from the red palanquin at the very back of the army. It was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper flashing by. The people of the celestial realm used all kinds of magic weapons to resist, but they were still forced to retreat. Some of the weaker ones had their magic weapons shattered by the sound of the zither and turned into ashes. When Shui Yimo arrived with Xinjili, she saw this scene. Xinjili sat upright in the air. With a wave of his hand, a zither appeared on his lap. After a few clangs, he began to fight with the demonic sound. Shui Yimo was also sitting next to Xinjili. She looked down at everything below and the blood-red palanquin in the distance. She pursed her lips and didn't say a word. Of course she didn't do anything. This time the demonic sound was extremely powerful, several levels higher than the one played by Shui Yimo. He was actually able to match Xinjili for the time being. The 2 kinds of zither sounds went back and forth, colliding in the wilderness. Even the originally calm air was shattered by the sound of the zither, and the dark clouds in the sky crazily rotated. Shui Yimo seemed to be shaken by the 2 kinds of zither sounds. Her face was slightly pale, and she leaned against Xinjili on the cloud. Xinjili glanced at her while playing the zither, then slightly frowned. He flicked his finger in the air and set up a barrier around Shui Yimo. He actually protected Shui Yimo inside, but because of this slight distraction, the demonic sound took advantage of it. His body was slightly shaken and he was injured. A line of blood seeped out of his arm. Julie, you're injured. Shui Yimo's face was pale and she was about to grab his arm. Don't move, be good. Xinjili flicked his sleeve, and the wound on his arm automatically began to heal. Chapter 1152. Of course, Shui Yimo's fingers didn't touch his arm. Because Xinjili had set up a barrier around her body, the opposite demonic sound couldn't hurt her. Naturally, she couldn't touch Xinjili, who was close to her. The 2 Guqin sounds continued to fight in the air. Not knowing why, Ning Xuema was somewhat panicked. Her heart was raised high, as if something that could reverse fate was about to happen, but she was powerless to stop it. Anxious, her vision turned black. When she opened her eyes again, she found that she had become an independent entity again. When she looked around, she found that she had become a spectator. She saw that Xinjili was playing the Guqin and fighting against the person in the blood-red palanquin. At the same time, he urged the cloud below him to slowly approach the blood-red palanquin. Obviously, he wanted to pull out the person in the palanquin and then completely eliminate him. And the soldiers of the immortal and demon world were once again fighting. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, and broken limbs were scattered everywhere. Accompanied by the screams of injuries or near death, it was exceptionally frightening. The battle between the two Guqin sounds was exceptionally long. Xinjiuli's mental power was not light, and beads of sweat seeped out of his forehead. Shui Yimo's face was pale as she sat beside Xinjiuli. She didn't say a word and was very quiet. As if she knew that the supreme god couldn't be disturbed at this time, Ning Xuema's gaze fell on the blood-red palanquin. She inexplicably knew that the person playing the Guqin in the palanquin this time was the elusive demon ancestor. Her gaze once again fell on Xinjiuli's face, looking at his white jade-like handsome face, lost in thought. In a trance, she felt that Xinjiuli's martial arts seemed to have regressed a bit. His Guqin sounds weren't as pure as when she first saw him. Originally, his Guqin sounds were majestic enough to penetrate the clouds and split the stone, without any filth, without any desire, without a trace of flaw. In this world there was simply no opponent who could match him. But now, there was a trace of noise in his Guqin sounds, as if he was worried, obsessed, and unable to let go. More importantly, his mental power seemed to have regressed, and the power of his Guqin sounds was much weaker than before. Ning Xuema's gaze fell on Shui Yimo's body. His heart suddenly stirred. Shui Yimo was a devil with a demonic body. Normally, a demonic body couldn't fuse with a human. Once fused, it would inevitably harm the human's life. Xinjiuli was a god. Naturally, he wouldn't lose his life just because he mated with Shui Yimo. However, would he lose a lot of his power because of this? Ning Xuema's heart raced. She knew that something big was about to happen. Although Xinjiuli had lost some of his power, he still had the upper hand in the battle between the two Guqin sounds. The magnificent Guqin sound suppressed the demonic sound to the point that it was almost unable to turn around. The cloud under his feet was also slowly approaching the big red palanquin. In the midst of the fierce battle, Shui Yimo, who was on the cloud, suddenly screamed. Her body was entangled by a soft rope that flew out from the big red palanquin. She was pulled down from the cloud and fell towards the blood-red palanquin. Xinjiuli's complexion changed slightly. His figure moved and he followed suit. Demonic sound took the opportunity to clang several times. Countless sound waves shot towards Xinjiuli's body, seemingly wanting to stop him from chasing after her. The faint blue light waves hit his protective barrier like water waves. His complexion also turned pale. However, he didn't have any intention of retreating. Instead, he chased after her even faster, even more urgently. Finally, just as Shui Yimo's body was about to be pulled into the blood-red palanquin, Xinjiuli caught up with her. He held her in his arms. Just as he waved his sleeve to cut off the soft rope binding her body, his body suddenly stiffened. Chapter 1153. A short blade pierced his heart. There were 2 grooves on the blade, and a line of blood quickly flowed down the grooves, flowing into Shui Yimo's sleeve. Ning Xuema's heart instantly fell into icy water. Shui Yimo actually killed the great god. You. Xinjiuli's deep blue eyes were like a stormy sea, falling on the face of the girl in his embrace. It seemed as if he didn't believe it, but also seemed as if he was disappointed. He was still holding her, his hands clenched into fists behind her back. A faint white light flickered as if he wanted to do something but couldn't. Shui Yimo's face was snow white. It was unknown whether it was because of the injury or because of fear. Looking at him in his embrace, she said in a flat voice, "I said, I want your heart. You also promised me. I only want your heart's blood. Then you were all fake to me?" Xinjiuli's face was even paler. Shui Yimo lowered her eyes, her eyelashes slightly trembling, but her voice was cold. "Yes, it was all fake. Forget about me." With a flip of her hand, she put away the jade bottle that was used to collect the blood. Then she abruptly slapped his chest, sending his body flying. "Don't." Ning Xuema, who had been patiently watching from the sidelines, suddenly shouted. She felt so distressed that she wanted to flip over, and suddenly threw herself over. Everything suddenly disappeared. The blood-red palanquin, the bleeding great god, and Shui Yimo, who had suddenly turned hostile, disappeared like melting snow. Not even a shadow was left in her mind, leaving behind only heartache. Her heart really hurt. It hurt as if there was a knife still stuck there, never being pulled out. Ning Xuema trembled as she opened her eyes. The scene in front of her was somewhat blurry. She faintly saw a red-clothed, black-haired man swaying in front of her. All the memories before she fainted came back. and Ning Xuema's body instantly stiffened. If she didn't remember incorrectly, she had fallen into Shui Yilan's hands again. The man swaying in front of her now should be him. What is he doing? Why are you shaking? Ning Xuema managed to spit out a few words. Probably because of her injury, her voice was extremely hoarse. Momo, you're awake. A hand touched her forehead. You still have a fever? Ning Xuema shook her head and tried to push his hand away, but her strength was too weak. Clearly it was not effective. Instead, it seemed like her head was rubbing against his palm. Shui Yilan's gaze deepened as he placed a hand on her shoulder. Momo, don't move. Your wound will open up again. Wounds? Ning Xuema finally remembered the sword that Wu Mo stabbed her. Her heart shrank, her vision turned black, and she fainted again. This time she didn't have any dreams. Even when she was unconscious, she still felt the pain in her heart. That pain drilled in and out, making her feel uneasy even though she was unconscious. She woke up a few times in the middle, but she was still groggy. Most of the time, she was in a daze and fell asleep again after opening her eyes. Every time she woke up, she would see Shui Yilan's figure by her side. He would wipe the cold sweat on her forehead, heal her and talk to her. His voice was intermittent in her drowsy ears, making her feel somewhat annoyed. When she woke up again, she couldn't help but shout, "Shut up!" This shout probably affected the sword wound on her body. Her heart suddenly hurt and she fainted again. Maybe her shout worked, or maybe she fainted too thoroughly. After that, she didn't hear him speak again. She felt that her ears were much quieter. Chapter 1154. When she was slightly awake, a question would appear in her mind. Why did Wu Mo want to kill her? Was he not afraid of the great god's punishment? In Ning Xuema's mind, she recalled the red-clothed little girl she saw when she was half awake. That girl was like a beautiful little devil. Her smile was sweet and pure, but it awakened the greatest fear in the depths of her heart. She was a jinx. Who would be the next person to die because of her? Who would it be? Could it be that the great god was really killed by her? No way. Definitely not. The great god said that his life was tough and he was not afraid of her jinx. Moreover, the great god was already an immortal, he would not die. He must have met with some accident and was trapped, unable to come back for a while. That was why Wu Mo wanted to get rid of her, to kill the great god first and report later. That must be it. That must be it. She hated that she was too anxious at that time, so she did not notice and rushed over, giving him a chance to stab her. Damn it. She actually fell for this kind of child's play. However, what accident did the great god meet with? So much so that his moonlight sword fell into Wu Mo's hands, and Wu Mo did not care about his punishment and wanted to kill her. When she thought of this, Ning Xuema felt as if there was a fire burning in her heart. This fire made the sword wound on her heart even harder to heal. The wound was sometimes good and sometimes bad, and she was sometimes awake and sometimes unconscious. Time passed quietly while she was awake and asleep. She did not know how much time had passed, but she finally woke up again. Ning Xuema slowly opened her eyes. This time, her vision was no longer hazy. She could see everything around her clearly. She was in a complicated and gorgeous hall. Below her was a cloud silk mattress, and above her was a mermaid silk quilt. The bed curtains were double-sided embroidered, thin and transparent. Embroidered on the side of the bed curtains was a small furry fox, lying lazily in the shade with its 9 tails swaying behind it. The green trees and red fox gave people a strong visual impact. Ning Xuema felt that this arrangement was somewhat familiar, but she could not remember where she had seen it before. She touched her chest with her fingers. There was a thick bandage there. She moved slightly and it affected the wound. The piercing pain made her break out in cold sweat. Where is this place? Shui Yilan's nest? Ning Xuema tried to sit up, but the moment she moved, her wound hurt terribly. She was sweating profusely, but she didn't even have the strength to sit up. The door creaked open and Shui Yilan slowly walked in wearing a fiery red robe. Ning Xuema was shocked. She closed her eyes and pretended to be unconscious. She could sense that Shui Yilan had walked up to her bed, but he didn't move for a long time. Ning Xuema tried her best to control her heartbeat. She could sense Shui Yilan's presence. He was standing just 1 step away from her bed and had not left. What was he going to do? Ning Xuema had goosebumps all over her body. However, she forced herself not to move. This person's actions were too unpredictable. Ning Xuema had never been able to understand his personality, so it was hard for her to guess his goal. She couldn't get up right now, so she didn't have the strength to resist him. She could only pretend to be unconscious, hoping that she could fool him and quickly leave. Was this bastard going to turn into a fossil in front of her bed? Ning Xuema couldn't help but curse in her heart, but she still closed her eyes. She was very good at pretending to be unconscious. If one wasn't a professional, they wouldn't be able to tell if she was awake or unconscious. Shui Yilan suddenly sat down beside her, but he didn't move for a long time. Chapter 1155. Sitting next to her was a person with an extraordinarily strong presence. The pressure on Ning Xuema's heart was also extraordinarily large. A moment later she felt a warmth under the blanket. There was another leg. This bastard crawled under her blanket. Ning Xuema's hair almost stood on end. She could no longer pretend to faint. Abruptly opening her eyes, she saw Shui Yilan's back leaning against the other side of the bed. One of his legs was inside her quilt, and the other was below. He crossed his arms, and his eyes seemed to be filled with mountains and rivers, filled with tenderness. "You're awake?" Ning Xuema pursed her lips and didn't reply to his nonsense. She secretly took a deep breath, but this slight movement affected her wound, causing her to sweat again. "Take your leg back." She didn't want to sleep on the same bed as him. She couldn't sleep on the same bed. Shui Yilan's eyes darkened and he didn't move. "Momo, I'm tired. I'll rest here for a while." Ning Xuema didn't say anything and struggled to get up. Of course, such a violent movement affected her wound, causing her face to turn pale. Shui Yilan's expression changed slightly. He sat up straight and pressed a hand on her shoulder to stop her. "Are you crazy? If you continue like this, your wound will tear open again. You get off." Ning Xuema insisted. "Otherwise I'll get off." "Shui Yilan." He laughed bitterly and got off the bed. "Momo, I've never been as ruthless as you. Fine, I'll get off. You stay here." Ning Xuema closed her eyes. Her struggle had indeed torn open her wound a little, causing her to be in pain. She was waiting for the pain to pass. There was a moment of silence in the room. Shui Yilan had also changed his previous aggressive teasing. He sat on a stool beside the bed and looked at the fine beads of sweat rolling down her forehead with a complicated gaze. It was like pity, anger, and sorrow. After a while the pain finally passed. Ning Xuema opened her eyes again. "How long have I been unconscious?" "5 days, Shui Yilan replied. Ning Xuema tilted her head and looked out of the window. Her vision was a little red, and the afterglow of the setting sun painted the window paper a little reddish yellow. 5 days had already passed. She didn't die. Instead, she spent 5 days at the gates of hell. Is the Almighty back yet? Did he know that Wu Emo almost stabbed her to death? She shouldn't be back yet, right? Otherwise he would have turned the world upside down to look for him. Where is this? Ning Xuema's gaze wandered around the room. She had a feeling that the layout of the room was very familiar. "What do you think?" Shui Yilan asked. How did she know? But since he asked, could it be that she should know about this place? Ning Xuema searched in her mind for a long time. Suddenly her heart skipped a beat. In a dream. This place seemed to be a scene in a dream. Although she could remember some of her dreams recently, she couldn't remember them clearly. She always felt that there was a thick layer of fog in her mind. Occasionally she could remember 1 or 2 fragments, but the fragments were also vague. Usually she didn't take those dreams to heart. Now that she saw the layout of the room, she remembered a little bit of it. "Momo, this is the place where you used to live." Shui Yilan stood up and lifted the bed curtain so that she could see everything in the room clearly. "The table and chairs here are arranged according to the way you used to live here. What do you think? Do you like it?" Chapter 1156. Ning Xuema. The decorations here were extremely extravagant, with crystal candlesticks and jade tabletop. Everything was shining brightly. This place was even more magnificent than the royal palaces she had seen before. It was like an exquisitely crafted cloisonne, with every line and hook exuding an extravagant aura. Was this her taste in the past? Who was he kidding? Ning Xuemo retracted her gaze and replied calmly, "Shui Yilan, I'm not your Momo and this is not where I used to live. I don't like such decorations either, so stop wasting your time." Shui Yilan narrowed his eyes. "You don't like it?" "I don't like it." Shui Yilan did not say anything else, but his eyes were fixed on her face, as though he was trying to read something from it. Ning Xuema did not want to say anything else either. She closed her eyes and adjusted her breathing. Her heart had been pierced, and if not for her MF reaching level 7 and Shui Yilan's treatment, She would have been a dead person by now. A bowl of steaming hot medicine was brought to her lips, and Shui Yilan's voice drifted over. Drink the medicine. The medicine had a strange smell, and Ning Xuema knew that it was extremely bitter even without tasting it. She sniffed it slightly and could tell that it was indeed used to treat her wound. However, one of the herbs was not right. If it was changed to another type of herb, her wound would probably be better. She wanted to reach out to take it, but the moment she raised her hand, the pain from her wound was excruciating, causing her to break out in cold sweat. Shui Yilan reached out and carried her up. He was extremely careful, not affecting her wound at all. His control of strength was frighteningly precise. Momo, don't move. I'll feed you. She leaned weakly in his arms. Shui Yilan was afraid that her struggling would affect her wound, so he sealed her acupoints so that she could only move her head. The rest was completely at his mercy. Ning Xuema, Shui Yilan, I'm not your Momo? Ning Xuema was a little annoyed. Shui Yilan was deeply in love with her, but he obviously treated her as another woman. This made her angry, amused, and helpless. Shui Yilan smiled elegantly. All right, if you say so, then so be it. Come drink the medicine. He fed her spoonful by spoonful. Ning Xuema, she decided not to argue and slowly swallowed the medicine one mouthful at a time. That medicine was indeed extremely bitter. Just one sip was enough to make people want to pull their tongue out and soak it in the water to get rid of the bitter taste. However, Ning Xuema did not care. Since she had survived, it proved that the heavens had not truly destroyed her. She had to quickly recover and find a way to leave this place to find the Almighty. There was no unbearable sin in this world, only a heart that could not be overcome. She had to get better. Hurry up and get better. She gulped down the medicine in big mouthfuls. Her brows were tightly knitted together, but she had no intention of stopping. The bowl of medicine was quickly fed to her. Shui Yilan pulled out a piece of candied fruit out of nowhere. Come eat this to get rid of the bitter taste. He was about to stuff it into her mouth. Ning Xuema pursed her lips and shook her head slightly. Shui Yilan was puzzled. You've already drunk the medicine. Are you still afraid that I'll put poison in the candied fruit? This candied fruit clashes with one of the other medicines. If I eat it, the effects of the medicine will be reduced. Ning Xuema said softly. Shui Yilan slowly retracted the candied fruit in his hand and smiled. Seems like your desire to live is abnormally strong. I forgot that you're a famous doctor. Chapter 1157. Although he was smiling, there was a trace of desolation in his voice. Ning Xuema didn't know what was going on, but she felt that Shui Yilan's attitude was strange after this meeting. It made her unable to feel his pulse and didn't know what he was up to. However, this time her life was saved by him. That was undeniable. Ning Xuema was also someone who could clearly distinguish between gratitude and grudges. She decided that as long as Shui Yilan didn't scheme against her and didn't touch her again, she would be more polite to him. Shui Yilan placed her back on the bed. His movements were still gentle and appropriate, and his tone was so gentle that it could drip water. Lie down properly. I'll go pick some more medicine for you. Was this still the vicious and merciless Shui Yilan who would desperately torture her whenever he was unhappy? Could it be that someone was impersonating him? Ning Xuema's gaze swept over his face and she blurted out, Are you really Shui Yilan? Did you take the wrong medicine? Bang. Shui Yilan's hand loosened. Ning Xuema's body, which had been placed halfway by him, fell directly onto the pillow and affected her wound. She let out a low cry as cold sweat poured down her body. Her vision blurred and she almost fainted. After the heart-wrenching pain passed, Ning Xuema opened her eyes again. She saw Shui Yilan sitting beside her and looking at her with a smile. Are you sure it's me now? Ning Xuema, all right, this is more like the evil Shui Yilan. Ning Xuema gritted her teeth and glared at him. She was in no mood to pay attention to him. Shui Yilan raised his hand and gently wiped the sweat on her forehead with his sleeve. Momo, I will never change. The one who will change is you. Don't worry, I'll make you completely come back. Ning Xuema's hair stood on end when she heard his last sentence. Return completely? Not to mention that she, Ning Xuema, was not that Momo. Even if that Momo was her previous life, that was only her previous life. The previous life and this life could not be mixed together. In this life she was only Ning Xuema. She would not become anyone else. How did he want her to come back? What strange method was he going to use this time? Ning Xuema shuddered at the thought of the people he had killed and controlled. She took a deep breath and changed the topic. My injury, was it you who treated me? The place where she was stabbed was very sensitive. If he were to treat and bandage her wound, he would definitely see her chest. Based on how Shui Yilan had treated her in the past, he might really do it himself. Shui Yilan's eyes rippled as if he had already guessed what she was worried about. Do you want me to treat you? Ning Xuema looked at him without saying anything. Shui Yilan reached out and touched her face. You don't have to worry. Ning Xuema was just about to heave a sigh of relief when he added, anyway, I've already seen your body. It doesn't matter if I see it one more time, right? It's your big head ghost. If Ning Xuema was free right now, she would definitely hit him with a pillow. Shui Yilan smiled and touched her face again. Be good and recover. I'll go out for a while. In order to prevent Ning Xuema from playing any new tricks, he did not release her acupoints. He gently tucked her in before turning to leave. This bastard. He never forgot to take advantage of her. Ning Xuema had the urge to send him flying with a kick. But now that she was in Shui Yilan's hands and was seriously injured, there was nothing she could do. Chapter 1158. Ning Xuema closed her eyes and adjusted her breath. She used the method that the Almighty taught her to heal herself. She had just completed one cycle of psychokinesis when she opened her eyes. She realized that there was a girl with bright eyes and white teeth in the room. The girl was holding a plate with gauze and ointment on it. She walked to Ning Xuema's bed and smiled gently. Miss Ning, I'm here to help you change your bandages. She was obviously the 8th princess of the Bright King's mansion, Ming Wan. Ning Xuema was good at recognizing people. She immediately recognized her. Why was she here? Why was she in Shui Yilan's territory? Ning Xuema's heart was filled with questions, but she did not ask. Ming Wan gently removed Ning Xuema's blanket and unbuttoned her clothes. Ning Xuema's acupoints were sealed. She could not move and let Ming Wan do whatever she wanted. Regardless of whether it was removing gauze or changing bandages, Ming Wan was extremely skilled. Ning Xuema did not expect that this princess, who was ostentatious wherever she went, would have such good medical skills. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. These few days, were you the one who bandaged my wounds? Princess Ming Wan swiftly applied the ointment for Ning Xuema while answering her question. Yes, how do you feel? Does the wound hurt less? Ning Xuema heaved a sigh of relief. It turned out that Shui Yilan had instructed Ming Wan to treat her wounds. He did not do it himself. She did not expect that Shui Yilan would suddenly become a gentleman. Ning Xuema was finally relieved. She looked at Princess Ming Wan busy and chatted with her. This imperial Princess Ming Wan was a straightforward person. She did not hide her thoughts and spoke whatever was on her mind. Her voice was crisp and clear, like pearls falling on a jade plate. From her, Ning Xuema found out some things that happened when she was in a coma. It turned out that after Shui Yilan had rescued her, he had captured more than 100 famous doctors to treat her injuries, causing chaos in the medical centers in the nearby cities. Most people wouldn't be able to do anything about a wound that pierced the heart, not to mention that Shui Yilan didn't allow anyone to touch Ning Xuema's body. He even stared coldly at them for a long time just to feel her pulse. This caused those godly doctors to be even more at a loss as to where to start. All of them were at a loss as to what to do. All they could do was panic. Some doctors even tried to persuade Shui Yilan to give up, telling him to prepare a coffin for the injured lady as soon as possible. In the end, those godly doctors were all sent to the Yellow Springs by Shui Yilan. They didn't even have a coffin. His cruel methods caused the other godly doctors to keep quiet out of fear. They didn't dare to say any more nonsense, but they didn't have any better ideas. Under Shui Yilan's coercion, they wrote many prescriptions, but none of them were practical. 2 days before she was injured, Ning Xuema was in a critical condition and almost died. Fortunately, on the 3rd day, Shui Yilan found this Princess Ming Wan in front of him. Although this girl was young, her medical talent was extremely high. She was especially good at treating sword wounds. As long as the person was still breathing, she could bring them back to life easily. Originally, Shui Yilan didn't know of Princess Ming Wan's reputation. However, he happened to overhear 2 of Princess Ming Wan's subordinates bragging about their princess's medical skills in a restaurant. They said that their princess's medical skills were rare, and Shui Yilan happened to overhear it. Shui Yilan was frantically searching for godly doctors. When he heard this news, how could he be courteous? He barged into Princess Ming Wan's room in the middle of the night and carried her in her sleep. Chapter 1159. Royal Princess Ming Wan's martial arts were not bad, and her bodyguards were also top-notch. However, they had met Shui Yilan. This mysterious person whose martial arts were second only to Di Zun. There was no one that Shui Yilan could not snatch away. Thus, Royal Princess Mingwan, who had been sleeping soundly in her room, was carried here when she woke up. She was only wearing a nightgown. Although Royal Princess Mingwan's temper was not small, she was smart enough not to get angry at this time. She calmly asked Shui Yilan what he wanted to do. Shui Yilan naturally would not beat around the bush with her. He immediately forced her to save him. Royal Princess Mingwan first looked at Ning Xuema's injuries, then looked at Shui Yilan's nervousness. She smiled in surprise, then slowly began to state her conditions. After Shui Yilan heard her say there's hope, his attitude immediately took a huge turn for the better, and he agreed to almost all of her requests. Thus, Royal Princess Mingwan not only had her own room here, but she also ordered Shui Yilan to barge into Mingwang Palace again just to take back a few sets of clothes that she often wore. The moonlight sword in Ning Xuema's chest was pulled out by Royal Princess Mingwan. All of the subsequent treatments were her efforts. She had successfully pulled Ning Xuema back from the gates of hell. Royal Princess Mingwan told Ning Xuema the gist of what had happened. Ning Xuema pursed her lips. She did not know what to feel in her heart. It seemed that Shui Yilan was really doing it for her good this time, and was not teasing her like before. Moreover, after meeting again he kept calling her Momo, Momo. It was obvious that he was treating her as another person to dote on. It seemed that Shui Yilan had recovered his memories from before he was sealed. He probably treated her as the woman in his memories? Momo Momo, it sounded so familiar. Ning Xuema didn't remember her dreams. She only faintly felt that the name Momo seemed to appear more frequently by her side recently. Then, what about this sword? Ning Xuema asked. In the hands of the owner of this place, Princess Mingwan said. Who was it that was so cruel and merciless to stab you? If it wasn't for the fact that your psychokinesis was high and you were able to use it to protect your heart meridian in time, this sword strike would have taken your life. Ning Xuema lowered her eyes. That moonlight sword was custom-made for the great god in the everlasting nation. Originally, she wanted to make a flute, but she didn't expect that a moonlight flute would appear. Thus, she simply let the blacksmith forge the moonlight stone into a sword. 3 months ago, she and the great god had taken it back from the immortal kingdom. She still remembered the scene when she gave the sword to him. His expression didn't change much, but he still wore the sword on his body. One had to know that the great god had that storage space on him. All of his things were in that space. He never wore those miscellaneous items on his body. This sword became the only accessory he had on him. She still remembered when the great god appeared in front of the Sun Moon sect's disciples with that sword, the gazes of those disciples. They were so shocked that they couldn't describe it. Even the usually calm Yelu Jing and widened her eyes and looked at her master as if she was looking at a western scenery. Shinjioli, who had always been low-key and mysterious, purposely walked around Buddha Lotus Mountain twice so that all of the Sun Moon sect's disciples on the mountain could see what his sword looked like. It was clearly something that had happened not long ago, but now it felt like a lifetime ago when she thought about it. How was the great god now? Ning Xuema couldn't wait to heal her injuries so that she could go and find him. Chapter 1160. Ning Xuema tried to use her telepathy to contact Kirin, but she could not reach him at all. Shui Yilan must have set up some kind of enchantment here to prevent her from contacting Kirin. She told herself that she had to stay calm. She could not panic at such a time. Ning Xuema and Princess Mingwan chatted for a bit and discussed some medical theories. Ning Xuema's profound medical knowledge made Princess Mingwan prostrate herself in admiration. She had met Princess Mingwan once before, but she was dressed as an old lady at that time. Although they had been together for a few days, the princess did not suspect anything. After discussing for a while, Ning Xuema added a few ingredients to Princess Mingwan's prescription and asked her to give it to Shui Yilan to make the medicine. Princess Mingwan sighed. Palace Master Shui has probably gone to pick the herbs himself. We can just wait for him to come back and make the medicine. Princess Mingwan, can't you go there personally? Ning Xuema was puzzled. There is nothing special in my new prescription. You can buy it from a normal pharmacy. Princess Mingwan shook her head. We are all locked up here. We can't get out at all. Let's wait for Palace Master Shui to come back first. She smiled and walked out. When she reached the door, she paused for a moment and turned back to say, Miss Ning, this Palace Master Shui treats you really well. These few days, almost all of the herbs were personally picked by him. Every single one of them is an extremely valuable treasure. Ning Xuemo raised her head and saw that Princess Mingwan had already walked out. Ning Xuema closed her eyes. No matter how well Shui Yilan treated her, she did not have any feelings for him. They were not even friends. Moreover, Shui Yilan treated her well because he was transferring his feelings. He treated her as another woman. Her injuries were too serious. Her chest hurt when she breathed a little too loudly. She endured the pain and slowly adjusted her breathing. The sooner she could recover, the better. When it was dark, Shui Yilan finally came back. When he returned, he went straight to the medicine refining room and placed the newly picked herbs in front of Princess Mingwan. You can boil them again. Commandery Princess Mingwan looked at the travel worn him and then looked at the herbs. She wanted to say something but hesitated. What? Is there something wrong with this herb? Shui Yilan was extremely sensitive and immediately asked. Imperial Princess Mingwan took a deep breath and said, Lady Ning wrote a prescription herself. The effect should be better than the one I wrote. I don't need these herbs. Shui Yilan was speechless. He had fought with the guardian beasts for half a day to collect these herbs and had even suffered some minor injuries. Who would have thought that he wouldn't be able to use them anymore? Royal Princess Mingwan was well versed in pharmacology, so she naturally knew how difficult it was to gather these herbs. Looking at Shui Yilan's expressionless face, she couldn't help but suggest, these herbs weren't easy to gather. Why don't we first decoct them tonight, and then use Miss Ning's prescription tomorrow? No need. Shui Yilan took the herbs and lowered his head to glance at them. Without another word he crushed them. In the blink of an eye, the herbs that were not easy to obtain turned into ashes and disappeared. Commandery Princess Mingwan's heart ached. Even if Lady Ning doesn't need these herbs, other people might. It's such a pity to destroy them. Shui Yilan raised the corner of his mouth and smiled faintly. In this world, only she is worthy of using the herbs that I gathered for her. Other people shouldn't even think about it. Commandery Princess Mingwan was speechless. Shui Yilan was too lazy to talk nonsense with her. Where's her prescription? Let me see it. Chapter 1161. Imperial Princess Mingwan directly handed the prescription that Ning Xuema had written for herself to Shui Yilan. These herbs can be bought at the pharmacy, so there is no need to pick new ones. I just don't know how effective they are. Shui Yilan took the prescription without hesitation. She is a godly doctor and she wrote this prescription for herself. Of course it can't be wrong. He turned around and disappeared. Naturally he went to get the herbs. Imperial Princess Mingwan slowly sat down and looked at Shui Yilan's disappearing figure, slightly lost in thought. In her life she had seen at least 800 if not 1,000 beautiful men, but none of them were as beautiful as Shui Yilan. Furthermore, he had a certain aura about him. He was as elegant as a poem, as beautiful as a painting, and when he moved, he was like a graceful scholar. But when he was ruthless, he could kill people without blinking. He could even kill people while talking and laughing. It made people feel a chill down to their bones. Ruthless like a snake, elegant like a crane. These two contradictory auras were perfectly combined on him. It did not give people a sense of disharmony as if he was born this way. This man was like a shining object. Imperial Princess Mingwan was unconsciously attracted to him. When she was kidnapped, there was still a fire in her heart. She also hated him and was afraid of him. But after interacting with him for a few days, she could not help but look at him. At this moment she was attracted by his deep feelings. So this kind of man could also care so much about a woman and take care of her. He must have fallen in love with this girl called Ning Xuema, right? It was a pity that the person that Ning Xuema liked was not him. The falling flowers were in love, but the heartless flowing water was heartless. She could only sigh helplessly. She shook her head and stopped herself from thinking too much. She focused on refining the medicine. After Ning Xuema used the medicine that she had prescribed, her injuries healed quickly. 10 days later she was able to get out of bed and walk freely. In these 10 days Shui Yilan would come to see her every day and talk to her. He had changed from his frivolous attitude towards her in the past to a refined and modest gentleman. After all, Ning Xuema already had a preconceived impression of him. No matter how elegant or gentlemanly he acted in front of her, she always felt that he was holding back a belly full of evil tricks. She didn't know how he was secretly plotting against her. Now that she couldn't escape from his grasp, she might as well not think about running away for the time being. When Shui Yilan chatted with her, she pretended to be mute most of the time and didn't respond to him for a long time. Otherwise she would pretend to be asleep and ignore him. She could clearly sense Shui Yilan's disappointment, but she could only pretend that she did not see it. Since he couldn't give the other party what he wanted, then he shouldn't give him the slightest bit of hope. Although this seemed cruel, it was actually a kind of mercy. Shui Yilan's nature wasn't particularly good-tempered. There were a few times when he wanted to flare up, but when he saw Ning Xuema's pale face, he held himself back. Now she was as weak as a fine porcelain. She couldn't withstand too much stimulation. If he overdid it, her injuries might worsen again. He could only endure it. Another 5 days passed. Ning Xuema had already begun to stroll outside the house. After she came out, she discovered that this place was a palace. It was built in the middle of a valley and surrounded by majestic green mountains. She couldn't tell which mountain it was located on. There was obviously a barrier here. Ning Xuema, accompanied by Princess Mingwan, left the palace and walked down the mountain. Not long after, they were stopped by an invisible barrier. Princess Mingwan told her that there were such barriers all around. Without Earth rank level 8 psychokinesis, it was impossible to break through. Chapter 1162. Ning Xuema looked at Princess Mingwan and asked, "Have you already escaped?" Princess Mingwan paused and couldn't help but laugh. Indeed, nothing can be hidden from Miss Ning. On the second day of her arrival, she had already thought of a way to escape. However, she couldn't even find a crack that could lead to the outside. Ning Xuema had studied the structure of this continent, and naturally she had also studied all kinds of famous people. She knew that Princess Mingwan was also a genius. She used to be a maid in front of the ancestor and now had the psychokinesis of an Earth rank level 4. She was the actual ruler of the Bright King residence and was first class in terms of scheming and intelligence. If she was not on the same side as Shui Yilan, then her words could be trusted. Although Ning Xuema was an expert in breaking barriers, her power had not recovered yet. She had not even recovered 10% of her power, so naturally she could not break through this place. Everything would have to wait until her power recovered. She turned around and walked back slowly. When she reached the palace she lived in, she paused. Shui Yilan was standing there in a red robe, leaning against the palace door. His lake-like eyes fell on her, but she didn't know what he was thinking. Ning Xuema wanted to walk around him and enter the palace, but he grabbed her wrist. "How is your recovery?" "It's okay." Ning Xuema wanted to pull her wrist back, but he was strong and she had not recovered her strength. She couldn't pull her wrist back and her face darkened. "Let go. Momo, walk with me." Shui Yilan did not let go of her. Instead, he pulled her and walked outside. His hand was holding her wrist so tightly that it hurt. Ning Xuema tried to pull her wrist back. "I'm tired. I don't want to walk anymore." "Let go." Shui Yilan used a little strength and pulled her to his side. He looked into her eyes and smiled faintly. "Tired? Then I'll carry you?" Ning Xuema. She knew he would do it. "Shui Yilan, do you always like to force others?" Shui Yilan held her hand and walked forward. "I usually don't force people because if they show any signs of being forced, I'll kill them directly. The only person I want to force is you. You should feel honored." This was really twisting words and forcing logic. Robber theory. Ning Xuema couldn't help but sneer. "Are you also so reluctant with your Momo?" Shui Yilan abruptly stopped in his tracks. Ning Xuema was caught off guard and almost fell over. She staggered for a moment before she quickly steadied herself. The wound on her chest felt like it had been pierced by an awl. Cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Shui Yilan pulled her close to his side and lifted his sleeve to gently wipe away her sweat. "Momo, when you regain your memories of your past life, you'll know how I treat you." Ning Xuema. She didn't want to argue with Shui Yilan about whether she was Momo or not. She had already declared countless times in the past few days, but Shui Yilan didn't listen at all. Her face turned cold. "What if I can't recover? Damn it." Even if that Momo was her past life, she didn't want to recover. She was Ning Xuema. Not just any other woman. Shui Yilan raised his hand to smooth her messy hair and said with certainty, "Momo, you'll recover." At this moment he was leading her to a hillside. There were flowers swaying on the hillside. The flowers were simple and elegant, but they didn't seem to match the extravagant buildings here. Chapter 1163. There was a wooden bench at the top of the hill. It had an antique feel to it and had a rustic feel to it. Shui Yilan pulled her to sit on the bench. "Momo, don't you think the scenery here is a bit familiar?" Ning Xuema swept her eyes over her surroundings before bluntly shaking her head. "Nothing. We used to come here often. You also liked the scenery here." Shui Yilan was unwilling to give up. It was the past again. It was about him and Momo again. Ning Xuema was too lazy to reply. She simply sat on the bench and closed her eyes to rest. Her hair was suddenly brushed aside from behind. She opened her eyes in surprise and subconsciously wanted to turn around. Shui Yilan held her back. "Momo, what kind of hairstyle do you like?" he asked while combing her long hair. Ning Xuema was speechless. She suddenly felt a bit irritated and wanted to stand up. However, Shui Yilan simply sealed her acupoints so that she could sit steadily in front of him. His fingers were nimble and in a short moment, he combed her hair into a beautiful hairstyle. After he finished combing her hair, he took out a bronze mirror and showed it to her. "Here, Momo. This is your favorite hairstyle. Are you satisfied with it?" A young girl was reflected in the bronze mirror. Her face was pale, but her facial features were delicate. Her black hair covered her forehead, and her black hair draped over her shoulders. There was a garland on top of her head. It was made from those elegant little flowers, and it made her face look a little brighter. To be honest, this hairstyle was not ugly. Ning Xuema might have liked this hairstyle on a normal day. However, Shui Yilan was obviously dressing her up as another woman. This made her feel very uncomfortable. She had the urge to tear this hairstyle apart. She closed her eyes and did not want to say anything. Shui Yilan looked at her for a moment and did not force her. He unsealed her acupoints and pulled her up. "Let's walk around somewhere else." Since she couldn't resist, Ning Xuema simply let him lead her away. Shui Yilan held her hand as they walked through one place after another. Every place had its own uniqueness. Ning Xuema keenly felt that the scenery of this place seemed to be a composite version of several places. Just like a certain film studio, many scenes were pieced together and all of them were cloned. Every time they arrived at a place, Shui Yilan would inevitably ask her if she had any impression of the place. Ning Xuema was also very calm and said that she had no impression of the place. After walking for 4 to 6 hours, Ning Xuema's body was still too weak. After walking for so long, cold sweat started to form on her forehead. She looked at Shui Yilan. "How much longer do you plan to walk?" Shui Yilan looked at her face and his eyes darkened. "Go back and rest." Nightfall. There were a few stars in the sky. Princess Mingwan finished changing Ning Xuema's medicine and came out. When she raised her head, she saw Shui Yilan sitting alone on the roof of the hall in front of her, drinking wine. His posture was tall and straight, but there was a dejected and lonely aura. There were a few wine jars piled up beside him. He was holding one in his hand and drinking with his head tilted back. He had the aura of a legendary drunken poet. Princess Mingwan's heart skipped a beat. She flew up and grabbed a wine jar from beside him. She cut off the top of the jar with her palm. "What's the point of drinking alone? I'll drink with you." Originally, when Shui Yilan saw her coming up, his fingers moved, wanting to throw her down. But after hearing her words, he didn't have the intention to throw her down. He just raised the wine jug. "Okay." The two wine jars collided in the air and some wine flew out and splashed onto their hands. Chapter 1164. Shui Yilan did not care, and neither did Princess Mingwan. The two of them stood and drank without speaking. 2 jugs of wine went into their stomachs. Princess Mingwan was not good at drinking, and after drinking this jug of strong wine, her face was as red as the morning sun. Shui Yilan drank even more, but his alcohol tolerance was astonishing. He had already drunk 5 jugs of wine, but he did not feel drunk at all. Instead, his eyes were brighter. "Palace Master, can you not get drunk?" Princess Mingwan was curious. After drinking this jug of wine, her vision was already a little blurry. "I wish that I could get drunk." Shui Yilan smiled bitterly. His gaze was distant as he looked at the large hall where Ning Xuema lived. It was as if he could see through the night into her room. She actually can't remember anything. Those were her favorite places in the past. "Are you saying that Miss Ning lost her memory?" Mingwan was puzzled. Shui Yilan suddenly stood up and smiled coldly. "It would be good if it was just memory loss." His sleeves fluttered and he floated down like a red cloud. He raised his head and sang, "The sun rises from the east and my red clothes are like fire." His voice was magnetic and slightly hoarse, and it had a kind of soul-sucking flavor. Princess Mingwan sat on the roof of the large hall and was stunned as she listened. She did not know why, but a sense of desolation rose in her heart. She did not know if it was for Shui Yilan or for herself. Time flowed like water in the mountain valley. In the blink of an eye, Ning Xuema had been kidnapped and brought here for 2 months. Her injuries were almost healed, and Princess Mingwan had been sent away by Shui Yilan. Princess Mingwan was the first to leave the valley alive. The other doctors did not even have the chance to walk out alive. They were all killed by Shui Yilan. When Imperial Princess Mingwan was sent away, she was caught off guard. She chatted with Ning Xuema for a long time, and after checking her pulse, she knew that her injuries were almost healed. She then came out to report the good news to Shui Yilan. She did not expect that just as she finished speaking, she would feel dizzy. In her daze, she heard Shui Yilan say a few words in her ear. Mingwan, you are the first to leave my palm alive. You're smart. When you go back, don't say anything. Imperial Princess Mingwan herself did not know how long she had been unconscious for. Only when she was hastily woken up by a young servant girl beside her did she open her eyes and discover that she had returned to her boudoir. Almost nothing in her room had changed. The only thing that had changed was her mood. After Royal Princess Mingwan returned, she naturally did not mention anything about what had happened in the past 2 months. She only said that she had a mental cultivation method that she could not solve, so she found a secluded place to cultivate in seclusion for 2 months. She had also cultivated in seclusion before, so no one doubted her words. Nothing much had happened in the Bright King residence during her absence for 2 months. After she took over, things quickly went back to normal. Those 2 months of life as a servant girl were like a dream to her. However, this dream seemed to have taken away her soul, making her remember the red-robed man. She had secretly sent people to look for that valley nearby, but they could not find it. There was not even a place that looked like it. It was obvious that the valley was not nearby. Perhaps it was not even on this mainland. The Bright King residence was well informed. The news of Ning Xuema's disappearance in the Sun Moon sect had also spread to the pugilistic world. According to the rumors, Ning Xuema had been injured and kidnapped by a demon in the Sun Moon sect. No one knew if she was dead or alive. However, everyone guessed that she was dead because there was a lot of blood at the scene. Chapter 1165. Looking at the situation, it was highly likely that after she was assassinated, the demon used poison to dissolve her corpse. That was why the disciples of the Sun Moon sect could not find a single trace of her clothes even after searching the entire continent. In this year, Ning Xuema had turned from a good-for-nothing into a genius. She had also subdued the divine beast Qilin and entered the ancestors' tutelage. All sorts of miraculous encounters had made her a legendary figure in this continent. Now that they heard that she had ended up in such a state, everyone could not help but sigh. She had become the hottest topic of conversation after meals. Princess Mingwan did not say anything and continued to handle all the family affairs as usual. The only thing that worried her was her precious little brother, Shiju. After that little brat heard about Ning Xuema's situation, he seemed to have lost his soul and shut himself in his room for a day. After a day he disappeared and left a note for her. I don't believe that she's dead. I want to find her. I'll come back once I find her. 3 exclamation marks in a row expressed his determination. Princess Mingwan could not help but facepalm. Whether Ning Xuema was alive or dead, her precious little brother had no hope at all. Had this little brat been blinded by love? She had no choice but to send people to look for this troublesome little brat. Of course, this also gave her the convenience of openly searching for that valley. Ning Xuema naturally did not know about the storm outside. She was almost going crazy from being cooped up in that valley every day. When Princess Mingwan was around, there was someone to talk to, so she was not too bored. However, after Princess Mingwan left, there was only her and Shui Yilan left in the entire valley. This made her have the urge to tear open the barrier and escape at all times. After Shui Yilan recovered his memories, his martial arts had improved greatly after a year of recuperation. He had basically recovered all the martial arts he had in his previous life. He also studied Shinjuli's barrier fiercely. After studying and studying, he himself became an expert in setting up barriers. The bounded domain he had set up was extremely dense and firm. It was not much worse than the bounded domain set up by Shinjuli. Although Ning Xuema's injuries had almost healed, her telekinesis had been sealed by Shui Yilan. She now had the mobility of an ordinary person, but she couldn't break the enchantment. Naturally, she couldn't escape. 2 months of time might be just a string of numbers to others, but to her, every single day was a torment. Ning Xuema still had Shinjuli's sound-transmitting talisman, but she had never been able to contact him. 3 months. She had been separated from him for 3 whole months. Shinjuli had asked her to wait for half a month before he left, but now there was no news from him for 3 months. She was now isolated from the rest of the world. She had no idea whether Shinjuli had returned to the mountain or whether he was looking for her like a madman. Longing was like weeds, drifting further and further away. Without separation, one wouldn't know the feeling of yearning. Ning Xuema had never thought that she would miss someone so much in her life. Every day when she opened and closed her eyes, she would see his shadow. That night she had a nightmare. In the dream she finally saw Shinjuli. In the dream he walked into a mountain. The mountain was like the legendary flaming mountain. There were burning flames everywhere. Shinjuli seemed to have cast a spell similar to the art of avoiding fire. From time to time, various flaming monsters jumped out to attack him. They were all quickly killed by him. He seemed to have consumed a lot of his physical strength. His face was getting paler and paler and his killing speed was slightly slower. Chapter 1166. Ning Xuema watched as he dealt with the flaming beasts. Her heart was raised high, fearing that he would not be able to endure and fall down. Looking at the situation, Shinjuli seemed to be looking for something in the mountains. He traversed one mountain after another, exploring every place he passed, but he was disappointed. In the end he walked to a crevice between two mountains. The crevice was only 2 feet wide but it was unfathomably deep. From time to time, blazing red flames would spurt out from the crevice. It was as beautiful as a volcanic eruption. Shinjuli looked into the crevice. Suddenly he jumped into the crevice. Ning Xuema, who was in her dream, almost screamed out loud. Shinjuli's white clothes were especially dazzling in the blazing flames. Probably because he had exhausted too much of his energy, his face was frighteningly pale. The flames had also burned the corners of his clothes. However, he ignored them and went down. Finally he reached the bottom of the crevice. Then he bent down to pick the red herb on the mountain wall. Just as his fingers touched the herb, a bolt of lightning suddenly struck down from the sky. That bolt of lightning directly hit Shinjuli, who was in the crevice, and made his body tremble. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky above the crevice. The originally clear sky was suddenly covered with large purple clouds. These clouds were spinning crazily in the sky. Every time they collided, a bolt of lightning would strike down. Every bolt of lightning would accurately strike into the crevice and strike Shinjuli. The crevice was narrow. Although it was difficult for Shinjuli to turn sideways inside, he could still fly forward or jump backward to dodge the lightning. However, she did not expect that he would ignore the lightning and bend down to pick the herb. When he finally picked the herb, there were already 3 bolts of lightning that struck him directly. He faced the lightning and jumped up. The golden lightning was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Every bolt of lightning struck the pale white barrier around his body, causing his face to become paler and paler. When he finally jumped out of the crevice, an even bigger golden ball of lightning struck down. The lightning was so bright that Ning Xuema had never seen it before. It was as bright as a big round table. Ning Xuema was so nervous that her heart almost jumped out of her chest. She couldn't help but scream, "Guru, be careful." Her voice wasn't soft at all. Her ears were buzzing from the noise and all the scenes in her dream disappeared. Nightmares? She had just opened her eyes, sweating profusely, when someone grabbed her wrist. The grip was a little strong, causing her wrist to hurt. Shuilan was standing beside her bed, looking down at her with a faint smile on his lips, but there was no smile in his eyes. "It's none of your business." Ning Xuema took a deep breath and tried to pull her hand back. Shuilan was very strong this time. He pulled her up from the bed. "Come with me, I'll take you to see something." In a cool hall there was a crystal ball. Shuilan dragged Ning Xuema to this place. He only let go of her hand when they entered the hall. The door of the hall closed behind them, leaving only the 2 of them in the hall. Ning Xuema couldn't help but take a few steps back. She looked at Shuilan cautiously. "What do you want me to see?" She had just woken up and was dragged here by Shuilan. Her hair was still messy and her clothes were a little messy. She looked a little embarrassed. She rubbed her wrist. Shuilan's actions were a little rough, so her wrist was swollen. Now that she had recovered, she felt a burning pain. Chapter 1167. Shuilan looked at her bruised wrist and paused. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end he closed his mouth and walked forward. "Come with me." Ning Xuema didn't know what he was trying to do, so she fell back a few steps and followed him to the crystal ball. "Come, put your hand on the crystal ball." Shuilan moved to the side to make room for her. Ning Xuema finally saw the crystal ball in its entirety. The crystal ball was about the size of a basketball. Inside the crystal ball, there seemed to be a colorful fog faintly rising. Within the fog there seemed to be countless moving scenes. The speed of the crystal ball was 100 times faster than a merry-go-round. Just looking at it slightly made people feel dizzy. The crystal ball looked like a prop used by wizards in movies. Ning Xuema took a step back and frowned. "What are you trying to do?" "Put your hand on the crystal ball and you'll understand." Shui Yilan reached out to pull her. "Be good and listen to me." If she put her hand on the crystal ball, he might use some evil magic to control her. How could Ning Xuema fall for his trick? She immediately took a few steps back. "Just say it." She took a few steps away from the crystal ball. She felt that the crystal ball had a trace of evil aura, and her heart beat faster when she got close to it. Shui Yilan waved his hand, and Ning Xuema couldn't help but stumble forward a few steps. She directly bumped into the table where the crystal ball was placed. If she didn't want to be hit, she could only press her hand on the crystal ball to stabilize her body. Shui Yilan had this idea. He thought that Ning Xuema's hand would definitely reach out to press the crystal ball, but he didn't expect that she would put her hand behind her back and use her stomach to hit the table. By the time Shui Yilan realized that something was wrong and wanted to stop her, it was already too late. He only heard a muffled bang and Ning Xuema let out a low cry. Her body bent and she directly threw herself onto the crystal ball. The force of her impact was not small. She actually knocked the huge crystal ball onto the table and rolled towards the ground. Had it not been for Shui Yilan's figure flashing and his hand catching the crystal ball in time, he was afraid that this precious ball, that he had spent several months to make, would have been smashed into smithereens. This girl did it on purpose. She wanted to destroy his crystal ball. Shui Yilan was furious. His handsome face darkened and a storm seemed to gather in his eyes. "Ning Xuema, you're courting death." He paused halfway through his reprimand and his gaze fell on Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema's stomach also hurt from the impact, and it also shook the wound on her chest. She almost spat out a mouthful of blood, and large beads of cold sweat appeared on her forehead. At this moment she was bending over and looking at him coldly. Her face was extremely pale and her eyes were ice cold. Shui Yilan's heart inexplicably trembled, and he couldn't continue reprimanding her. "Shui Yilan." Ning Xuema said word by word and her gaze was cold. "I advise you not to waste your effort. I'm Ning Xuema and I'm not anyone else. And I won't turn into anyone else." She forced herself to straighten her body, turned around and left. Although she didn't know what Shui Yilan wanted to do, he kept calling her Momo and said that he wanted to make her remember everything. Now that he had made this crystal ball and asked her to place her hand on it, it was obvious that he wanted to cast some kind of spell on her. Who knows, he might be able to transfer that Momo's memory to her. Perhaps a person had a past life, or perhaps countless past lives. Perhaps in every life, they had entangled with many people and married many people. But what did that mean? Chapter 1168. Since she drank Meng Po's soup and forgot about her previous life, there was no need for her to be entangled with her past life. Whether or not Momo was her past life, she didn't want to know. She didn't want to bear all of her grudges. She also didn't want to have her memories and make things difficult for herself in this life. Therefore, Ning Xuema was very repulsed by the crystal ball and Shui Yilan's method. It was a pity that her psychokinesis was sealed. Otherwise, she would have already fought with Shui Yilan and escaped. Shui Yilan probably didn't expect that Ning Xuema would have such a big reaction. He stared blankly for a moment. By the time he came back to his senses, Ning Xuema had already walked to the door, preparing to open it and leave. His eyes darkened. After preparing for so long, how could he give up just because Ning Xuema wasn't willing? His body moved slightly and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Ning Xuema. He pulled her back to the crystal ball and coldly said, "Momo, today you have to do it even if you don't want to." He was afraid that she would resist again, so he simply held her hand and forced her to press it on the crystal ball. The crystal ball seemed to have a strong suction force. The moment Ning Xuema's hand was pressed on it, she couldn't pull it back anymore. There seemed to be waves of magnetic waves from the crystal ball surging into her mind, making her head feel like it was filled with water. It was so painful that it felt like it was going to explode. She couldn't help but scream. She hurriedly tried to pull her hand back, but before she could do so, Shui Yilan pressed her other hand on the crystal ball. "Momo, I'm sorry. It might be a little painful, but this is what you have to bear. Bear with it, and it will be over." Shui Yilan's voice was like a demon's voice that pierced through her chaotic mind. "Bear with it, your sister." After Ning Xuema pressed both of her hands on the crystal ball, She felt as if two electric drills were inserted into her brain at the same time. It was as if there was a high-pressure water jet inside the electric drill, spraying out countless images into her brain. It was so crowded that her brain felt like it was going to explode. She couldn't help but curse. Excruciating pain. He had never experienced such intense pain before. The sharp pain caused Ning Xuema to break out in a cold sweat. Her face was as white as snow, and then it turned as red as a tomato. Her body was trembling so badly that she could barely stand. Shui Yilan's gaze fell on her face, and a trace of pity flashed across his eyes. His Momo. He didn't want his Momo to suffer like this, but if he didn't do this, she wouldn't have recovered her memories from her previous life and wouldn't be able to stay by his side at ease. He stretched out his hand and the black wave zither appeared on his lap. Ding ding dong dong, he began to play. Following the sound of the zither, the images that entered Ning Xuema's mind gradually became clearer. It was as if shredded film was being reconnected and glued back together. It was played in sequence. The still images connected together to form an animation of blood and fire, love and hate intertwined together. Those were the memories of another girl. They were as long as a serial, flashing through her mind and attacking her original memories. Due to the interference of the zither, Ning Xuema's head finally stopped hurting. She didn't know when her body stopped trembling, but she stood there in a daze. Her back was as straight as a javelin. Her face began to return to normal. Shui Yilan glanced at her while he was playing the zither. Seeing her like this, he let out a sigh of relief and lowered his eyes to play seriously. The melodious sound of the zither was like the wind blowing through the treetops, constantly ringing in Ning Xuema's ears. Chapter 1169. The sound of the zither continued for an entire day. When it finally came to an end, the hall fell into true silence. It was so quiet that even the breathing of the two people could not be heard. Shui Yilan had obviously used some kind of spell when he was playing the zither, and it consumed a lot of MF. After an entire day, his face was extremely pale, and there were even traces of blood seeping out from the corner of his lips. However, he only used his sleeves to wipe it off. His eyes were fixed on Ning Xuema's face, as if he was a child waiting for the results of an exam. Ning Xuema stood there with her eyes lowered. Her face was as pale as snow, and she was looking at her hands. When the sound of the zither stopped, the crystal ball seemed to have lost its effect as well, and she could finally withdraw her hands. The crystal ball on the table seemed to have been sucked dry of all its spiritual energy, and it turned into a dull gray color, like a stone without spirituality. Ning Xuema did not move for a long time. Shui Yilan finally could not hold it in anymore. Momo? Ning Xuema did not seem to hear him. Shui Yilan did not give up and called out again, much louder this time. Ning Xuema slowly raised her head. Her eyes were as dark as the night, but the corners of her lips slowly pulled into a smile. Shui Yilan, the 9D blockbuster you showed me was not bad. It was very exciting. Shui Yilan. He did not understand the key word she said. 9D blockbuster? Ning Xuema yawned. Even if I told you, you wouldn't understand. In short, the drama you rehearsed was very logical, melodramatic, emotional, and able to move people's emotions. It made people feel as if they were in the real world. However, a drama is just a drama and not real life. Therefore, after watching it and being moved, we should just do what we should do. She strode out. I'm sleepy after watching this for an entire day. Shui Yilan finally reacted. He rushed over and stood in front of her. Momo, do you think what you're seeing isn't real? Ning Xuema took a step back and looked at him calmly. Well, let's just treat it as real. I'll just treat it as watching a documentary. So what? That Momo isn't me. Even if you force her memory on me, it's not me. That's you. Your past life. You're Shui Yimo. Ning Xuemo raised her eyebrows and smiled. Do you think that if you force her memory on me, I will become her? Shui Yilan. Why did he feel that something was amiss? Ning Xuemo recovered Shui Yimo's memories. Shouldn't it be Shui Yimo? Should it be, even if she didn't throw herself into his arms after such a long time, she shouldn't be treating him like this? Her reaction was no different than if she hadn't recovered her past life's memories. It was rare for him to be in a daze. Ning Xuema took advantage of his daze to open the door and go out. The sun outside was just right. The midday sun shone on her body, making her feel warm. Ning Xuemo remembered that when Shui Yilan forcefully pulled her into the hall, it was close to noon. She didn't expect that after watching the film for an entire day when she came out, It was already noon of the next day. The hall was quite cold. She had stayed in there for an entire day and felt that she was about to be frozen. When she came out just now, even her bones were emitting cold air. She stretched her almost stiff body under the sunlight and took a light breath. She completely emptied her mind and closed her eyes to enjoy the sunlight. After staying in a dark place for so long, she had long been longing for sunlight. Fresh memories that didn't belong to her stirred in her mind. Chapter 1170. Just as that thought was about to surface, she immediately suppressed it. Ningxuema, you are Ningxuema. A secret agent from the 21st century. You are not some demon princess. You should not let her story affect your life in this life. In his previous life, before and after this life, if he were to be entangled in this life, how would he be able to live? Ningxuema walked slowly under the sunlight, as if she was casually admiring the beautiful scenery around her. She looked very carefree. But what about her heart? She sat down on a stone bench. Little flowers bloomed under her feet, swaying gently in the wind. She suddenly recognized that this place was the scenery of the back garden of the demon palace. In the past, Shui Yimo often took Shui Yilan to play here. Shui Yilan combed her hair and weaved garlands for her. However, there was no sunlight in the demon palace. There was only the demon light deliberately created by the demon ancestor. That demon light was pale white and could not be compared to normal sunlight. However, it also had the ability to promote the growth of flowers and plants. In the back garden of the demon palace, all kinds of flowers and plants bloomed vigorously and luxuriantly. Ningxuema suddenly stood up. Damn it. She said that she would not be affected by her previous life. Why did she unconsciously recall those memories that did not belong to her? She walked with large strides to the palace where she was currently staying. Sleep, she wanted to sleep. After she left, Shui Yilan appeared in the same place. He looked at Ningxuema's departing figure with deep eyes. The memories in the crystal ball did not seem to affect her much. This was really out of his expectations. Could it be that there was an accident with the crystal ball that he made? She did not completely absorb the things inside? He wanted to check the crystal ball again, but that thing could only be used once. Using it once would exhaust all the energy inside. Even if he wanted to check it again, he would not be able to see anything. Therefore, as powerful as he was, he could not detect how much Ningxuema had received about Shui Yimo's memories. Ningxuema slept for half a month. Shui Yilan came to visit her many times, but she was always asleep. He knew that forcibly instilling memories of Snowy Moon into her mind was, after all, an act of defiance against the will of the heavens. It would harm her own brain as well. Right now, her deep sleep was a form of self-recovery. She should be fine after sleeping for a few days. Shui Yilan's initial estimate was that she would sleep for 7 to 8 days, but he didn't expect her to sleep for so long. A few days later, he wanted to wake her up several times, but he gave up after thinking about it. Sleeping wouldn't kill her. She would wake up when she had enough sleep and she would have to face everything when she woke up. Momo, you just don't want to accept this fact now. When you really come back to your senses, you'll understand that you actually love me. For me, you even gave your body to that person just to obtain his heart's blood. Momo, we should be a couple. We were in our previous life and we should be even more so in this life. Shui Yilan's finger lightly brushed against Ningxuema's sleeping face as he spoke in a low voice. Great God! Ningxuema suddenly murmured in her sleep. Shui Yilan's fingers stiffened. His eyes flashed with anger. She had already recovered her memories of Snowy Moon, but she was still thinking about that person. He reached out his hand as if to do something, but after thinking about it, he gave up. He turned around and walked out. Ningxuema slowly opened her eyes. She had already woken up when Shui Yilan sat down, but she was unwilling to open her eyes. She had also heard Shui Yilan's whispers. Her heart felt as if it had been pierced by something, but she remained calm and collected. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.